Welcome back to Bulletproof Mindset, Scotland's #1 health, fitness and entertainment podcast. Today's guest episode is with the lovely Rebecca McKenzie, also known as Bex, the Empowerment PT. Now, this episode caught me off guard. This is a fantastic story. Not that I didn't expect it to be, but there was so much that Bex has been through that I really think is going to be so valuable for you guys listening. There's tons of lessons in this. There's tons of growth, obviously, from Bex, and just a fantastic all-round episode. Now, this has to be up there with one of the longest episodes. Please stay tuned to the end because there's not a minute of the podcast that you want to miss. Now, you can find Bex on Instagram at Bex_the Empowerment PT, and that has 2 extra E's. I'm going to leave links in the show notes to all her social medias and how you can work with her if you are a woman that wants to be empowered. Men too. I actually don't know if she trains men. Maybe that's one. If you're a man that wants to feel empowered, reach out to her. And lastly, before we get into the episode, if you're new around here and you haven't listened to the podcast before, first of all, welcome. How are you? Hope you're having a good day. And secondly, one of the best things you can do to support the show, and it's completely free to do, is either subscribing on YouTube or leaving a 5-star rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're choosing to listen to this. So please help us out and try to reach 200 ratings. So without further ado, enjoy today's episode, and I'll see you guys on the next one. When you're going into like someone's story, it can be, I don't know, it can be repetitive, and that's a hard thing from my point of view. I'm trying to like make it not be the same repetitive questions. So like when you're a guest, for example, you know, like, oh, I know what he's going to ask me, so I like to like throw tangents in there, and I was like, overrated, underrated is a good one. That is a good one. Me and James used to do that. That's how we used to open it, and that's how we met actually. Oh, really? Because he loved belts and when lifting, I was like, belts and wraps are for gimps. He's like, no, they're not. We just went for it. So I've got a few overrated, underrated ones, but we can go into that in a wee bit. How does it feel to be on the other side of the mic then? Other side of the hot seat? Now you know how a guest feels. You nervous?
Mental, yeah. I think I just never actually thought that I would actually have stuff to talk about. Like, I didn't think I was that interesting, but hey-ho, here I am. Yeah,
everybody's got a story to tell.
Yeah, that's it.
Everyone's got a story to tell. So speaking of stories then, let's dive into yours. Best place to start would always be like, how have you managed to get to where you are today? So you are the Empowerment, Bex, the Empowerment PT as you go by. So has it always been, like, where did the word empowerment come from? Do you remember vividly, like, why that stuck with you more?
I think, like, it just came to me one day where I was rebranding and I'd kind of, like, had just finished off, like, all my therapy. And I was sitting thinking about where I'd come from and how much that meant to me. And I was thinking, like, of a word that would describe that. And empowerment was the first thing that came to my head. Where I was like, I need to use that. I think that's a really good thing to do, was like that whole word, and it just had a nice ring to it, like Bex Empowerment PT. Like I was like, I'm going to stick with that.
What was it before? I'm curious.
I think it was just McKenzie Fitness. I think off the top of my head, so it was a bit meh.
Do you know, I'm glad I never went into PT when I was younger, because at the age of 27, when I was thinking about, like, should I be Coach Crossar or should it just be this? Yeah. My branding was going to be Swole Gamers. Kid you not. So I was going to target.
That was a market for that?
That was a huge market, so much so that's, you would have heard me on John's podcast, and I was talking about doing Twitch for a while, and I was like, Swole Gamers, and my brother said to me, he's like, yeah, but it's like Swole Gay. So it's like, you sure you want to go down that route? I'm like, I could already envision like the logo.
You're like, I'm flamboyant.
It's like controller, 2 muscles coming out the side of that. So God knows what mine would have been if I was back when I was 19, 20. No, so at least that's not too bad.
It was literally
it's like the standard.
It was literally just McKenzie Fitness. I also had one before that in lockdown, which was Coached by Rebs. And I was like, who actually calls me Rebs?
Give yourself a nickname.
That in my life. So yeah, I had to change that. And then Bex, like John has always called me Bex, so it's just stuck. And I don't remember him ever calling me anything else. So gradually people just called me Bex over time. So that's what
So you're in trouble if somebody says Rebecca.
Yeah, if somebody says Rebecca, I'm jumping 3 feet in the air. Like, I'm scared. It's mad. But then there's people who, like, his mum will still call me Rebecca because, like, that's how she knows me. So
it's like very official.
Yeah, but like that's allowed because it's his mum. So but if anybody else, like, I know I'm in trouble. I'm like, what have I done?
So see, fitness for yourself, you always been pretty active, pretty kind of sporty and stuff like that. What's been life like for you growing up?
Like, I grew up in Govan and Paisley, so in 2 schemes, like, literally had drug dealers below us and all that. It was mental. But I started getting into fitness as actually a way to cope with bullying at school. I was quite chubby when I was wee, like pretty obese, I would say. And I actually got into sports as a way to like lose weight, but also to make friends because I didn't have any in school. So I went into karate and I was there from like 6 up until about 16. And I didn't leave because I had like a choice, which maybe we'll get into, but it was like, that was my whole life and I loved it there. And it taught me so much about myself. It was like discipline, fitness, mobility came into it, stretching came into it, and like competitiveness also came into it as well. And I think that's kind of like me as a coach now. Like I've learned the traits of being a coach from who I was coached by.
Yeah.
I had a really good club. I had a really good sensei.
Yeah, you were saying David was one of your...
David taught me.
That's
like,
crazy.
He was like,
small world.
He's what, 30, so I'm 25 this year, so he's like 6 years older than me. So yeah, he would have been like a teenager when I was wee. I've still got pictures of him when he had hair. And like when
need to bring them back out.
Yeah, like I still got pictures of him. We went to Berlin with the karate club because I was getting really close to being part of the national team. And there's like pictures of us at the Berlin Wall and I'm like, oh my God, that's David. Like it's mad to see how he's came as well. But he was a good fighter and I went into fighting because that was more my gig. There's like 2 types of karates. There's like kata and then there's like kumite or kumitai, it's called, something like that. And it's like sparring, so like you have your protection, you have your head guards if you're over 16 and stuff like that. And it's like contact, so you can like punch like the body, you can't hit the face though. You can kick, you can like do certain techniques around it, and then kata is more like a dance almost. So it's like
the performance, isn't it?
Like
Performing arts,
like it's like a performance about a fight, so it's a bit different. But like
it's very showboaty.
Yeah, but it was also really good to practice for because I think I was the most flexible I'd ever been at that stage because I was like stretching so much to get into these positions. And you would have like your Dan grades where you'd have like your kind of ceremonies, seminars as well, of like you would showcase what you'd learned in order to go a grade up like a belt colour. So I reached like my black belt and all that, and it was really good. But I was there for like 10 years, and that's the first proper sport I got into.
Like really committed to it?
Yeah.
So what age are you then back then? So I always think about like bullying's something that I'm finding that people that have these extraordinary stories and why they're so resilient today, they've went through some sort of hardship and troubles. I know that's not the only thing that you've gone through necessarily, but what was bullying like for you then?
It was awful. It was I think I blocked a lot of it out, but it was ongoing from when I was in primary 1 up till I left high school. I actually left high school early because of it. But I'd moved school twice. So
never really helps, didn't it?
No, like I'd moved school twice and I don't remember this at all. But my stepdad had actually told me that I'd come home and it looked like I'd been stamped on. Like there was bruises all up my legs and stuff. And I actually don't remember this at all, but I generally just think I blocked it out. And my stepdad took me to the park around the corner from our house. I had one wee friend at the time and we were playing and I was at the top of these climbing frames. Like it was like a big, I don't know if you've ever seen them in the play parks. It looks like you can climb all the way up to the top and there's like ropes and metal and it looks like a big climbing frame. So I'd went up to the top and my stepdad was like, somebody pushed you off from like that high up.
Oh really?
Yeah. So like someone that was bullying me had like literally just pushed me off and I'd like fell, split my head open and all that. He'd actually went and spoke to that kid's mum and was like, did you just witness that, or like what's happening here?
Aye, what the fuck?
The mum was like so apologetic, and I think that was the first time she'd actually found out that our son was bullying me.
Yeah.
So it was like mainly boys that bullied me. Girls were a bit like bitchy, I suppose, at that age, but I could ignore that. But it was like the boys that picked on me all the time.
What was it for? Like, what was like? Was it just because you were a wee bit different? Yeah.
Because I was overweight. But we came from a low income household, so like I hadn't even tried a vegetable until like my stepdad came on the scene. Like my mum worked 3 jobs. I'd never met my biological dad.
I was gonna say your dad he's never been in your life.
Never met him at all. But I'm very neutral about that because I think it works 2 ways. Like I've not looked for him, he's not looked for me. So my stepdad adopted me.
What doesn't know you, it's not gonna go by you, type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. He's my dad now, like my stepdad, and he will always be my dad. So it's that kind of void has been filled. But
so put me in the picture, like growing up, are you the oldest?
Yeah, I'm the oldest of 3.
Right, so being the oldest, kind of first one to go to school, where you were staying before you kind of moved first, was that just single parent household, or was your stepdad in your life at this point?
So he came into my life when I was 7.
Right.
And my mum had worked with him for a year before she introduced me to him. They met in IKEA. That's where she used to work. That was one of her jobs.
It's normally where relationships end as well.
I know, by the way. But he was the nighttime manager and she was working the night shift. That's how they met. And they were together for a year before he was formally introduced to me, which I actually respect her for. And then he started moving in with us, and then my life got better with him because he introduced me to so much. Like, I got fruit and veg, I got a better diet. He told me to go into sports to like help with the bullying, whereas my mum kind of buried her head in the sand and like was a bit ashamed of it. I spent a lot of time with my gran growing up because my mum worked so often, which I think made it difficult for us to have a bond because she worked so much and I never seen her. So I see my gran more as my mum because she brought me up, and any other family members that watched me at the time. But she just had to do what she had to do. When I was 9, she became pregnant with my middle sister. So I'd been an only child for that long, and then my sister comes on the scene. And we laugh about this now, but I actually hated her for the first like couple of years of her life.
The attention that this individual gets, you're like, I'm not getting any.
What is this person? Who is this? Like, we laugh about it now, and I just, like, we're best pals. Like, I love her. And then my middle sister, when she was 2, my youngest sister was born. So, but she's got special like needs, so she's autistic. So that was difficult to deal with. She never got diagnosed until she was like primary 2, which is actually quite early, all things considered, but the school helped with that. But when she was growing up, like, that was quite hard to deal with because like we didn't really know what was happening. Like, one day she just woke up and regressed, like didn't really talk, kind of like was wobbly on her feet again, wouldn't spend time with anybody, tantrums were off the scale, and we just didn't know what that was about. It was very bizarre. Like, we thought something had happened to her, like, and she just wasn't telling anybody. She like struggled to communicate, and she had to have things in a certain way, and she still does. But like, I had no clue what that was.
Yeah, you understand it now.
Yeah, I understand it now. But like, when I was younger, I had no clue what that was. So we struggled to bond because of that, because I just didn't know what it was.
It's awareness of things. Yeah. So it's like you think, it's weird how you go look within before you go, is it something else? Yeah. It's like you blame yourself, or you think, is it because I'm this type of person?
I don't even think my mum knew what it was.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. So there's two ways we maybe go with this questioning. Parents having regardless of circumstances, have an element of the food they put on the table, and that can lead to unhealthy relationships, all this sort of stuff when it comes to nutrition. What was food like for you growing up? Because I think I know we're 5-6 years apart, but they didn't really know much at all, and it was like, everything was like your typical kind of white family with mayonnaise, and that was the sauce.
Turkey, dinosaurs, and potato smileys most of the time. I was a pure rank rotten Wayne. I would like eat butter out the tub and all that. Like,
were you just left to your free reign because like it was at your grand's, and what our grandparents like, they love to feed us.
So because I spent a lot of time with my gran, and she will hold her hands up to this, she's a feeder.
Aye.
She still is.
I think most grandparents are.
It's ridiculous. Like, her whole fridge and freezer is packed with food. I don't know if she thinks we're going to go into the apocalypse, but her whole fridge and freezer is full to the brim.
It comes from a place of love as well, and that's the hard thing about it. It's crazy like how you, weirdly enough, you became a coach, and you'll understand more about this now, but you're like, yeah, look, there's different ways to like love your grandkids.
Mental. She still does it now. Like, I come round, and the first thing she wants to do is feed me.
Feed you.
I actually don't know if she just gets some sort of like sick pleasure out of it, like pure love seeing people eating that, and I'm like, stop. So
that's what your childhood was like with your gran and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
When do you move school? What age
Primary
is
2.
Right, okay, so
so I moved literally my first year, and then into primary 2 I moved. So we'd moved house anyway, it came at the good time, but that was an excuse for us to move because it was too far away from like where
did you move to?
So we moved to just outside. We actually moved to my grand's house first in Erskine, and then we moved just to outside Paisley after that, like beside Glasgow Airport kind of area. But we moved because of the bullying and also because of the house. We were moved into my gran until they'd bought a house together, so they were just like doing it up and stuff, so it was livable. But it was actually the best thing that we could have done, because although that school, like, I still got bullied after I left, the other school wasn't as bad as the first one. So that was a blessing. But then when I moved to the school I went to when I was staying at my gran's, like, it still happened because, like, I still was a bit overweight. I hadn't had a lot of social skills because obviously I didn't have a big friend group, so I kind of really struggled with, like, making friends. So I didn't really know how to, I was quite awkward, and I think people pride on that because of that, and I ended up kind of like just keeping myself to myself. I had like a couple of friends that I did speak to, but again, like, you had your groups in primary school. It was like the popular people that kept themselves to themselves, and then like the weirdos. I think I fell in between the weirdos, to be honest. But it was like they would pick on you for daft things. Like, I got a bob and it was like up to here. Because my hair, like, I don't know what my mum was thinking, but she got it cut up to here, and I got slaughtered for that.
That's one of the main things you remember.
Yeah, slaughtered. So it was like stupid stuff like that.
Just primary school as well.
Yeah. High school wasn't too bad. It was like on and off, and I think it was just whether you were the talk of the town or not. Everybody got it at some point. But I think when I was leaving school early was when it was at its worst. And it's just when I was like, right, I'm at an age now where I don't need to put up with this anymore. Like, I can just go. I made up some excuse to my guidance teacher that I had an apprenticeship, and I just boosted out of there. I wasn't waiting for anybody. I was like, I'm Whitney boosting. So I literally was kind of floating in between what I wanted to do, and I didn't actually work for like, or do anything or go to college or anything for like a year. My stepdad like got me a job working for like he worked in a company, like a DIY place. So I was like in another branch working for this company. And that was like my part-time job, and I was like, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life.
Yeah. So you're doing karate alongside of this as well, and is that what is that looking like is it giving you interest to compete in things, or is it something that is it just taking your mind off everything else?
Yeah, so when I was going through school, I like obviously did my karate like 3 times a week, so like twice in the evenings after school, and then once at the weekend on a Saturday. And it was at Renfrew Sports Centre. And I loved it there. I think most of my friends were at karate, and that's why I loved going. But it got to the stage where I almost feel like, looking back, my mum was trying to like live her life through me. Like, I feel like she was trying to do a bit much, and she was very competitive. And this is actually how I ended up leaving. It wasn't a choice of mine. I was obviously quite close to like being on the Scottish team because I was doing really well. And we were down south, I remember, for a competition, and I was like getting my gear on, ready to fight. And I was fighting one of the kind of really well-known girls at the time who were like quite high up in like her level. I was fighting her. And much to me not knowing about this, my mum had actually elbowed the girl. Like, she was said that she'd came in the door and a witness was like just see my mum just pure elbow this lassie. And she claimed it was an accident, but it was clearly on purpose. Then that girl's coach went and told my coach. And I didn't get told about this until after the fight, which I'm quite glad about.
Yeah, so it would have thrown you off.
Really affected how I was doing. And I was mortified. And I think that's where...
What age are you at this point? So you're aware of it?
I must have been about 15.
Right, so you're kind of...
So I'm like, what the hell? So I didn't get told about it until after the fight, but I was mortified, and I never spoke to her for the rest of the day because I was like, you have embarrassed me. I didn't know what could have happened. I didn't know the repercussions of how serious it was, but she'd basically like assaulted a child, like, and everybody was like, what's going on here? She just pure tried to claim it was an accident. She was like, oh, I'm so sorry, like, that didn't mean to bump into you there, like, just pure flung it off. But I don't know what her intentions behind that was. I don't know if she was trying to like let the girl know that I meant business, or like she was on my side, or like she was like, better watch yourself. I don't know what she was thinking. But she did it anyway. And then we went back to the club, and it was just after my 16th birthday, and my sensei kind of like pulled my mum in and was like, I need to chat to you. And I thought, well, that'll be about like what she did, like she'll probably just get told off, don't do that again, and obviously if I hear about it, then don't come back to the competition, sort of thing. I didn't think I was going to get kicked out, which ended up happening. So he basically was like, we can't have this on the club. Like, it's embarrassing. Like, what we witnessed, like, that can't happen. And I was like, what? I was like, I had nothing to do with this. Like,
so they're telling you this?
Yeah, well, they told my mum, and then obviously my mum told me.
Right.
Like, basically, from what her point of view was, she had an argument with him about it, and he was like, we can't have this. Like, you can't go about doing that. Whether or not, like, she had anything to do with it, like me, you can't go about doing that. You're bringing shame on the club. If that gets about that our club is like that, that's obviously embarrassing for us. And I totally understand where they're coming from now.
See, when you found out about it, is it the coach that was telling you that had happened?
Yeah, so my coach told me that my mum had did it. Like,
how are they communicating that to you? Because you're a young girl.
He just came out with it. He was just like, your mum's just elbowed somebody. I was like, what? Right. Like, I came off and I was like undoing my gear and all that, and wetting my pan, and he was pure like, yeah, unfortunately, like, just been told by the other group, the other coach, your mum's elbowed somebody, like, on the way out the door.
And so this led to you not being able to train there anymore?
Yeah, like, they basically was just like, don't come back. Like,
did they speak to you at all?
No. They just.
So I think it's a bit. And I only say this because I've just recently had Scotland. Scotland's the rivals martial arts, and he's all about the great things that martial arts can do to from a young age for kids, and very similar to what you experienced. Like, they can be an escape from bullying, feel like a sense of community, work on themselves, resilience, all this sort of stuff. Yeah. And we're talking about the parent side of things and how parents can try and step in and really control it. It's like, no chance, I'm the coach, and I know what's best for your kid. That's like where they guide them through. So actually, it's quite sad to hear that they've not really kind of kept that.
I think they just probably thought at the time, like, if that's what your mum's like, what are you like?
Yeah, so we kind of tarnished.
I think they probably thought maybe I would do that, or like maybe I thought that behaviour was acceptable.
So you've had quite a, I know very recently, not recently, it's a couple of months ago now, where you've now kind of cut all ties with your mum.
Yeah, that was very mutual.
Going up to that point then, I think it's probably worth communicating that, because I think a lot of people will struggle with their relationship with their parents. You've done a fantastic episode on this as well, which I'll link in the show notes. I think it's worth people kind of hearing your thoughts and talking through it. So this is probably quite a raw conversation to have with it.
Love it.
Has it always been like that since day one? Can you remember any? Because you mentioned that she wasn't there much because she was working and all that sort of stuff, so it was your grand.
I think, like anything, like, there was good and bad parts throughout me growing up, but what I do remember is the bad parts. It's sad because I did really try. Like, it's not like I've not tried. I have really, really tried to, like, have a relationship with her, and what I've found from that is, like, I can only handle her in small doses. I really struggle with the fact that she is my mum because we are so different, and people used to say that, you know, you're quite similar, and I get offended by that because I'm nothing like her. If they knew what she was like, they would maybe take that statement back, but I think it's just because they see us and our mannerisms maybe when we're on a good day and think, oh, yous are quite similar, but we're not anything like each other at all in the way that we approach confrontation, in the way that we approach conflict, or in the way that we deal with situations.
Like your souls are different, like how you respond to like certain things. I just
really struggle with the fact that she's related to me because of just how different we are. I'm actually convinced that she's adopted me and just not told me. But I think if I was to look back when I was younger, like, I do think she was a good parent to me when I was young, like when I was like a child up until I was about a teenager. I think it was when I was a teenager and I started getting a voice that she had a problem with that. And I think I had a lot of different opinions to her that she didn't agree with.
What was some of them?
So the way in which my mum would handle confrontation would be
throwing elbows.
Yeah, that, and also getting really defensive. Right. Like, she would get her back up instantly instead of just saying, hands up, I was wrong. Like, she found that really hard. Whereas I was always the first person to be like, I'm really sorry. Like, I would never mean to hurt you, or like, I didn't mean that. Like, let's talk about it. And I remember even from a young age, like teenager, I would be doing that. I'd be like, let's fix this, because I would hate for it to be hanging over any of our heads. But my mum is just pure like, that never happened. Like, don't know what you're talking about. Like, denial, defensiveness, back up, guard up, can't speak to her. And if she has an opinion that you don't agree with, chances are she'll just walk away out the room. Like, she won't give you the time of day. She doesn't want to hear it. So that's just one of the things that we're quite different on. But whenever something happened at school, it would always be like she'd find a way to blame me for it as well. So like, if something happened, like if I'd fell out with my friend, she'd be like, you must have done something to cause that. What did you do? What did you say?
So
And it made me,
from the sounds that you never had her support.
no, like it made me feel like I was the problem all the time. So that's probably why I struggled to make friends as well, because I had in my head that like I was a problem, and she would never talk to me about the situation. Like, right, walk me through this. Like, how can we resolve this? Maybe we can have a chat with so and so, and maybe you can be friends again. It was always like, what did you do? You must have caused that, or like, did you say something out of turn? Like, it's in a way it's kind of made me have more accountability to myself now, but it does make me question myself.
Yeah, because you've obviously, we were speaking off camera there that you've went through therapy and done a lot of work.
Yeah.
But 3 years and you kind of spend working through this. So I know it can be hard trying to think back to what was your frame of mind before that, because you've actually done really good positive work to like speak, like have the self-awareness to kind of navigate through that. What was like going through your mind then throughout high school and stuff like that? When did that relationship come to? I know it came to an end, or you've tried to fight through it over the last couple of years, but when do you move out and things like that? Is that
so? This is a mad story. My mum actually, like, she moved to Belfast for work. Like, she works in the civil services. I won't tell everybody her job, but she works in the civil services. And she moved to Belfast for that. But the way in which she moved was typical of my mum. She'd fell out with somebody in the street, and that person happened to have a daughter that was best pals with my sister in primary school. And my sister actually started getting tormented at school because this girl was getting told by her mum about what my mum was doing and what my mum was saying. So my sister started getting bullied because of my mum, to put it bluntly. And my mum decided that to escape that, she would take a job elsewhere and leave. But she gave me an ultimatum and was like, you can either come with me and
what age at this point?
I'd 19. I'd literally just met John when this happened as well. So she said to me, you can either come with me and try and restart things, or you can stay here and figure it out. And I was like, what an ultimatum to give your child. I was like, well, I'm not coming with you because I have nothing to go over there for. I'd have to restart everything. I'd just started a relationship with John. I wasn't leaving that. I'd also went into my degree at this point, like for health and fitness, and I wanted to finish that. So I was like, I'm not coming with you, like, nothing to go with you for.
Is your stepdad still together?
Yeah, so he was working, but he'd planned on moving.
Right.
They ended up divorcing, so that never happened, but he was planning on moving to Belfast too, if he could get a transfer from where he works. Yeah. But that never ended up happening because their building in Belfast got delayed due to COVID. So he ended up staying here longer than he intended to. He still lives here now. But I ended up moving in with my gran. I was essentially homeless. Yeah. Because my mum had left and I didn't want to go with her. So I don't know if it was a case of maybe she'd initiated it, but I was intentionally homeless. So I stayed with my gran and I stayed with her throughout lockdown. And I stayed with her throughout meeting John, and John would travel 40 minutes to see my gran and see me from Cumbernauld to Paisley. I'd travel back up with him. I didn't drive at this point, so he'd have to come get me. And I'd stay at his over the weekend, and like, we made it work. It got to the point in lockdown where my gran, she's got rheumatoid arthritis, so she's on methotrexate, which lowers your immune system. She got to the point where I had to stay with John for like 5 months. We hadn't even been together a year at this stage.
Straight in the deep end,
Straight in the deep end, because my gran's arthritis and her medication like had lowered her immune system so much that she was terrified of getting COVID. So she told me to stay with John basically until it all kind of calmed down a little bit. And I ended up staying there for like 5 months. Him, me, his mum, his sister, all in the same house.
Your gran, is this your mum's mum?
Yeah.
So what's their dynamic like, out of curiosity?
I think it's the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, honestly. I think my mum's had a lot of trauma that she's dealt with from my gran that then she's not dealt with and passed on to me.
You seen that? No, it's not a picture, it's a video. It's a guy, it's like how generational trauma works. And he's pouring the glass of water and how that kind of trickles down through family. So
yeah, I think that's what's happened. My gran's not a bad person, but she's very set in her ways. And I don't think my mum took well to that. My aunties,
that's why she rebelled.
Yeah, and my aunties and my uncles kind of agree with that. They all know, like my mum's one of 4, I think, 4 or 5, can't remember off the top of my head, but she's part of a big family. My uncle's the only boy, so everybody else is girls. She doesn't speak to any of her sisters, but she'll speak to my uncle, which kind of tells you all you need to know, really. But she's always said, and my aunties and uncle have always said, that my gran is very, very, very headstrong, very stubborn. When she makes a decision on something, she's set to it. Equally, when she doesn't like something, she's convinced on it.
Yeah.
So
what are you like as the first grand? Are you one of the? Have you got
I was
cousins
first
in that first? Right. So
yeah.
just training older clients, like the first grandkid in the family is like the praised one, spoiled with toys and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So when your mum leaves to go to Belfast, first day, do you remember the feelings that you were going through at that point?
Yeah, I just felt abandoned. I was just like, why have you given me this ultimatum? I was like, how can you present this to me as like a casual conversation? I was sitting in the car with her at the time. We'd just went out. This was in my attempt of like trying to build a relationship with her. So she like completely sabotaged it in that conversation, in that moment. Like it was difficult ever since the karate incident. I think I'd really struggled to even take a liking to her. I don't think I could have even forced myself, because in that moment it felt like she'd stripped everything away from me, and then when she moved to Belfast it felt like she did it again. Yeah. It felt like she just stripped it away from me.
Do you think you had resent building?
I had so much resent, yeah. I was so angry. There's still a lot that I probably won't forgive her for. Like, there's a lot I can forget about, and there was a lot that I can't forgive, and that's probably one of the conversations that I don't think I can really forgive her for, because I could never put myself in that position of like telling my child, come with me or figure it out yourself. Like, it was just such a weirdly presented ultimatum.
And also your sisters are getting
and she was taking my sisters
away,
just to add on to that. So our relationship now is strained because they live in Belfast and I hardly see them.
How does that make you feel now?
Heartbroken. Like, I raised them, like my sisters. Like, when my mum was working all the time, she still had a demanding job before she left Belfast, so she would work quite a lot before she moved over there. And my stepdad worked like round the clock for his job, which he feels like was more of an escapism from their marriage. But he worked all the time as well. So I would go to college, I'd take them to school before I go to college, spend my time in the college classes, pick them up from school, make sure their homework was done, bath them, feed them, make sure they were okay. If they were going out for their friends, I'd like, if you help but entertain their friends, like give them snacks. Like, I was basically like a third parent in the house. So I had like raised them because of the age difference. Like, there's 10 and 12 years between us. So it almost felt like she was taking my kids away. It was a weird feeling. Like, it like she just took everything away from me in like 5 minutes. And I just like, when she asked me that question in the car, I just remember like burst into tears. I was like, I have tried for years to like build this relationship with you, and now you're just fleeing, running away from something and taking everything with you. And my family really struggled to deal with it as well. Like, my family have never really come to terms with the fact that she lives over there. My gran goes over and visits regularly. She's 72 years old. She's getting the flight over to Belfast. Like, she's making the effort to see them, or she'll get the ferry. But she still has never come to terms with it. Like, she'll phone me all the time and be like, I can't believe they're still there. Like, I can't believe it's been that many years. I really didn't think they'd be out there this long. Like,
was that 6 years now?
6 years, yeah. They've been there. But they're fully settled. Like, they go to school. Like, my sisters go to school there. Yeah.
So what age are your sisters when
they're 15 and 13 now. So
it's quite young. I guess for your 13-year-old sister, I guess she was transitioned to high school.
Yep.
Can sometimes be a nice cut-off point. I moved schools 3 times. I moved in primary 5, and I started my primary 6 at a different primary school. That was crazy, the amount of fights I got into.
Yeah.
I lasted halfway through primary 6 and I moved to where I went to high school in Coltness.
Yeah.
And I remember those times I was like, man, this is terrible. But the break for me was primary to high school, because there's so many more kids and you can sort of get lost in it. So I guess that they're kind of in the peak of that. What's the relationship like with your sisters just now?
Strained, honestly, is the word for it. Like, I think they're just going through a phase of they want to spend time with their friends, which I went through too when I did have friends. I went through that stage as well. So whenever I try and text my sister, like, do you want to call? She's like, oh, I'm tired. I'm like, okay. But then I'll see her out with her friends, and I'm like, right, she obviously just wants to spend time with her friends. That's fine. My younger sister, obviously, because of her additional support needs, like, she is not great at communicating. She's not great at texting. She would rather phone. But she's a big gamer, so every time I try and phone her, she's playing Fortnite or something. I'm like, guys, give me a break here. But I will obviously call them when I can, and you know, there is still a lot of love there. She actually tagged me in a TikTok the other day, and it was like something about how she couldn't live without her sisters, and I was like, oh, she still loves me, that's fine. She still likes me, that's good.
Yeah, a wee bit of validation there.
Yeah, I was like, I was pure worried. I was like, oh, what if she hates me? But she loves me, so that's fine.
So 19 to 25, just on the, guess the last piece of the relationship with your mum.
Yeah.
How do you try and make that work then? Because you obviously didn't decide to cut ties at that point.
Yeah,
it's a big shock because you don't see her as often. You have to work out your own dynamics. What kind of builds up in those couple of years?
Just like how I noticed that it was always me reaching out to her, and it was always me like wanting to see her, and she would never say, oh, let me come see you.
Did she ever come over?
She did, but when she was visiting, she'd always see my gran, and she wouldn't tell me that she was coming.
All right.
Like my gran would say, like, oh, by the way, your mum's coming over. And I'd be like, news to me. So I think it was just the realisation that like we weren't really interested in each other's lives anymore. And it was kind of like a mutual decision in the end. I went over to see them for Christmas 2 years ago, maybe. And I'd stayed for like Christmas into New Year. And I thought I would get so much out of that trip. I thought maybe we could reconcile. I thought because I was a bit older now, we could maybe put our differences aside. I thought it was all just...
Like Christmas is a proper like family time and all that.
I'd like kind of gaslit myself into believing that like everything I'd done as a teenager was just me going through a teenage strop, and like she wasn't actually that bad. But in working through everything with my therapist, like there was a lot that was mental that I actually think it's probably for the good that we don't speak. But I just kind of said to her at Christmas that I would like to work on things, and then she said that she would make the effort, but she never followed through. And I think it was just after that trip that I decided that I was done trying. Like it was all one-sided, and I just messaged her over Facebook and I said, like, I feel really sheepish that I'm having to do this over a message. I would have rather have said this to your face, but I just couldn't find the words. I just don't think that our relationship is going anywhere. It felt like a pure breakup. It was so weird. I was just like, I just don't think we've bonded at all since as long as I can remember. I will never know why, and maybe one day you'll tell me, but I just don't really know why that is. But I'm done trying now. Like, I've gave you everything I can. I've tried my best. I just don't want to have it thrown back in my face anymore. And she just kind of came back with, like, she would do this thing all the time when I would try to have these conversations before. She would just say, like, oh, does that mean I'm a terrible mum then? Like, does that mean that I've not done enough for you? Yeah. Like, I can't believe you're saying this after me raising you and I gave you my whole life. Like, she would just make me feel so guilty, and she would never take accountability for anything that she did. Even now, if like she ever listened to this, she'll probably be sitting there in a fit of rage. Like, I never did that.
First one-star rating, eh?
But I know if the one-star rating comes through, it's hard. But like, she had, as much as she wants to deny it, there is so many receipts of like her being the way that she was.
So this is the kind of last piece of contact that you sent in. When was that? That was just...
So, yeah, it was a weird one because at this time, when I'd messaged her that, not long after that, my stepdad went into a coma. And I didn't get told.
Yeah, like, I think this is bizarre.
She never told me.
Your mum and stepdad together at this point? Or is it just because they've got kids and that there?
Yeah, so I realise that there's not really a solid timeline to this story.
No.
It's just because of what's coming to my memory of like what I've blocked out. But my mum cheated on my stepdad with someone that she worked with in Belfast, and my sister actually was the one that told my stepdad because she discovered it. Like, she went down for their drink and she thought my mum was getting attacked. You can imagine what they were doing, right?
13, 14 years old.
My youngest sister thought that my mum was getting attacked. That's all I'm going to say. Turns out they were not getting attacked.
My God.
So she phoned my stepdad and was like, there's a man in this house. I don't know who he is. I think mum's hurt. Can you come like tomorrow, like come to Belfast? And my stepdad was like, what? Like he was perplexed. So he ended up phoning my mum in the act and was like, Sky's just phoned me saying that there's somebody in the house. What's going on? And my mum just, I actually praise her for this because this is the first time she's held her hands up and said, do you know what? This is what it is.
Wow.
So
I'm genuinely speechless.
she didn't have any story to tell. She just didn't have any excuse.
This is your youngest sister, then this is the one that's like
Sky, yeah.
no filter. There's the beauty of
That's the beauty of autism.
autism, yeah. The first
I'm
instinct
so
she'll
glad
think
that she thought it was being attacked. That's all I'm going to say. But
She might have a wee bit of work to do with therapy when she's older. I think it's going to come round.
Fine.
Yeah.
We're all going through it. My stepdad's even going to therapy now. But
I was going to say, like, so you're obviously extremely close with your stepdad, which I was going to come on to there. But
yeah,
how did you find out about this scenario?
So this is a weird one as well because I actually didn't speak to my stepdad for a while.
Yeah, because I've heard this in, I think it was 2 or 3 podcasts, or maybe it was your stories on Instagram.
Yeah, so
it's a relationship that kind of rekindled recently.
Last year we rekindled in September, which was largely by accident. But basically, when him and my mum divorced, he actually told me that he didn't think we could have a relationship anymore. But I think that was his way of healing. He was hurt, and he wanted to push anything that reminded him of my mum away.
Yeah, just cut all ties.
Included me. Like, I'm not his kid, but like my sisters are. So I understand why he did it. It didn't make it any easier, but I understand why he did it. And I've forgiven fully for it now. But he didn't speak to me because they were going through the whole divorce proceedings. He's met someone else now, she's amazing. But he didn't speak to me. And then last year we rekindled largely by accident because when my sisters came over to visit from Belfast, my gran had arranged a holiday house up north near Perth. And I drove up to see them and spend time with them for the weekend. Didn't realise my stepdad was going to be there. And when I seen him and when he seen me, we both just burst into tears and we both just were like, let's go a walk. So we went a walk and we just filled each other in. And then that's when he told me he'd been in a coma for 3 months. And his kidneys had failed. He was on life support. He said he looked like Homer Simpson, like he was swollen up in yellow, like everything that had happened to him. And it's because he's got Marfan syndrome, so his heart valve doesn't work and it can also inflame and it can burst. So that's essentially what had happened. He's got a pig valve in and stuff now, and he's got a pacemaker, so if you listen to him, if he was in this room, you could hear him tick, which is quite fun. We call him Cogsworth because he ticks. But that had failed. It failed before, like years and years ago, when he was taking my sisters to school one day. Like that happened years ago. But it happened again, and it was when I think he said he was on his way to work, and he didn't feel well, and they had to call an ambulance for him and stuff, and they put him in a coma to help with everything that was basically failing. He lost his spleen on the operating table. Because they had to fix his heart. And I don't know how this happened. I can't remember now. But basically when he was getting operated on, he lost his spleen and he lost so much blood. And I think that's the reason he went into the coma, because he'd lost so much blood essentially. And then he's on antibiotics now for the rest of his life because he doesn't have his spleen.
So he'd recovered from all of this.
Yeah.
He went through all of this.
Yeah.
I'd imagine the guilt that you felt when you heard this because you're living your life. You're trying to,
I had no
like...
idea.
So did you cut ties with your mum at this point, or you just try pushing her away?
I had cut ties with her at this point.
Right.
But this was before this all happened that we cut ties. So she didn't even tell me
that this was going on.
This was happening. My sisters didn't really know anything, so I can't blame them. I would never do that, but they didn't tell me either because they probably had no idea what was going on, didn't know the full story. He was in hospital again in January because his spleen started to grow back. Like, it's bizarre what the body can do, and that caused complications. And he was nearly in a coma at that point. He was in the hospital for a good while. I remember I was about to do my weekly call with my girls, and the nurse phoned me and was like, nurses are so detached because they have to be, but she was pure like, yeah, you might die tonight. I would come down. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, they're so...
I was like, PTSD. So yeah, we spoke about all that last year in September, and I was like, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. If I had known, we would have met up sooner. Because he'd been like recovered from this for a while. And he was like, he just laughed. He was like, how were you meant to know? He was like, do not feel bad. But he said to me that day, he was like, I never want us not to talk again. It's like, I never want you to go through that and not know about it again. And I never not want to have you in my life again. He's like, I want you in my life as my family. Doesn't matter what's going on. I don't want us to not speak. So he's made the effort. He's actually coming in tomorrow for dinner. But he's made the effort ever since then. He's so interested in what I do. He's so interested in what John does. He loves John. He's so interested in meeting his family. He is actively in such a better headspace because he's went to therapy. He's done work on himself. Like,
probably also, I hear a scare like that, it's going to wake you up. So
yeah,
you realise all these small things that maybe hold you back in life.
That's what he said to me. He was like, I've faced death. He's like, I've literally looked death in the face, and I'm not scared of anything.
Yeah.
And that's taught me so much in my life. Like, you think your life's bad until you've literally been at death's door. Like, there's so many times, like with his heart condition, like with Marfan syndrome, it can happen so much. Like, it's a condition that affects your whole body. Like, you're really abnormally tall, you've got elastic skin, your heart valve doesn't work, like the rest of your organs can be affected, you can go blind. Like, he's faced so many problems with his health, and he's faced death that many times that he's not scared of anything. His life is for living. He gives zero fucks about what people think about him. He cares nothing about apart from his family, apart from his new girlfriend, like, apart from his work. Like, that's the only thing that his centre of his universe is right now. And I respect that. But I think if you look at your life and you think of the worst thing that you could probably go through, like, it's probably nothing compared to what has already happened. And I think he knows that. It doesn't matter what happens to him, whatever stresses he goes through. He nearly died. Nothing is worse than that. Yeah. So it truly opened my eyes to, like, truly what we think is bad and what isn't really. So after that weekend, like, we just started chatting again. We went out for lunch a good few times. I was still kind of nervous around him because I didn't have the full trust with him. Because obviously he just turned around to me one day and was like...
Yeah, so, like, see, going back to, like, obviously it's fantastic that that's came full circle now, which is great to hear. But going through that, when you get that sort of, or you hear that from someone that you've seen as a dad, you've grown up, it's the last parental figure that you've got in your life. Yeah. John in your life at this point?
Yes.
Right, so I guess that is a bit of a saving grace there that somebody else believes in you. But what did it do to your confidence and everything?
It picked a brilliant day to do it. I had my fairy test the next day.
Oh, did you? Did you fail it?
No, I passed it. But,
I'll show these fuckers.
I respect him in the sense that he took me out for lunch to talk about it. But I think the biggest fear in my life has always been abandonment, and that's something that I worked through therapy a lot with. But because I've had so many people in my life that I looked up to abandon me, and that was just another example of that happening. Was like,
so you got your taekwondo, your karate, then the situation with your mum,
and then he's decided that he doesn't want it anymore.
I know we're kind of skipping ahead a wee bit, but has there ever been anything within you to try and figure out or have a relationship with your actual dad, or is that knowing what your mum's like now, or is that no interest you at all?
Like, I feel like we're so far ahead that I just don't know if it'd be worth it. Like, I don't know if he's even still alive. Like, I don't know where he is. I don't know if he's got kids of his own now. I don't know what his life is like. I don't know if it's worth going into that world. I don't know if he's a bad person. I've only got what my mum said, but I don't know if that's true. Like, I have no idea. I know his name, and that's it. And I don't even have any pictures of what he looks like. And to be honest, like, I'm just very neutral about it. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I don't have any feelings towards it because I've never known him.
Yeah.
But I felt differently towards my stepdad because obviously he'd been in my life for as long as I could remember. He raised me, he adopted me.
So he is your dad.
So he is my dad. And the fact that he just like walked away from it all was like, that was hard. Mm-hmm. That was the hardest thing I think I have ever went through, and it hurt more than my mum because of how much I looked up to him and how much I felt like he'd changed my life for the better. Even when I was younger, as I was saying, he introduced me to like vegetables. Like I probably would never have had that had he not stepped in and was like, you need to eat better.
Yeah.
You know, like he's been the pinnacle of me and my self-development. And when he turned around and was like, I just don't think I can have this relationship. Like, I need to work on myself and I need to go through this with your mum. And like, I don't know when we'll talk again, but, you know, I know it's when we'll be both ready at that point.
Yeah. What age are you at this point? This is your...
So I just was about to do my theory test, so probably like 22.
Cool. So,
22, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt another fantastic guest episode. How are we enjoying it so far? Crazy story. We're only just getting started. The second half of this episode it just gets better and better. The more and more you listen to this, we get deeper and deeper into Bexy's story. Look, the reason I'm interrupting just really quickly, if you made it this far and you're enjoying the episode, I need a favour. I mentioned at the start of the episode, if you could rate the podcast, this would mean the world to me. It's completely free to do. And if you've made it this far, all you have to do is click the three wee dots on Spotify and then click 5 stars if you think it's 5 stars worthy. So, enough of this short break. Let's get right back to it. So, like going back like way to the start, like growing up, like there's not been a ton of great role models in your life.
No.
You hear this question all the time, who was the role models growing up? Who comes to mind when someone asks you that? Where do you dive your interest into?
Do you know, as much as like me and my gran have had their ups and downs, I do look to my gran as someone who's like the glue to our family. Like, she's 72, acts about 30, like, she's so young in the head. She raised me when she didn't have to. She's looked after the grandkids so often when she didn't have to. She took us into her home. She took me into her home when I was homeless. She has always been there for me throughout every drama I've had in school and life. She made the time for John. Like, she is the rock of everybody. And I look up to her because, in a way, although like how strong she is, how headstrong she is to her detriment at times, she is someone I aspire to be, is like how strong she actually is as a person. And I always looked up to her, I think, in that sense. Yeah.
Does anyone else come to mind, like who you've maybe sought, I don't know, inspiration from, or this sort of like when you're looking at others' lives and you're like, oh, that's a lifestyle I'd love to live?
Yeah, it's weird because I don't think I had role models until like I was like in my 20s. Like
self-development, isn't it?
Yeah, like when I started surrounding myself with like the right people, I guess. Like I look up to John, obviously, like for what he's done for himself. His mum is incredible as well. Like Alison has been the mum that I've never had. She has took me under her wings so many times, like even letting me live in her home.
Yeah, she sounds like a superstar. And for you guys listening, if you don't know, you like keep hearing the word John's like, who's John?
That's my boyfriend, sorry.
John, we had him on a couple of podcasts ago, John Hamilton. So the Young and Lazy podcast, so you can tune into that to hear all about his incredible mum. Right, so let's get into like what was some of the things you enjoyed throughout high school. Like, what was your interest? Where did you start to navigate life towards this journey of like? I understand where empowerment comes from now. I think you can start to tell like, right, I can see why that's been such a powerful kind of message of what you want to instill in other women. Where does your interest start to peek into? Do you know, like not being this chubby kid anymore?
So like being a PT is always, I thought, been an accident because I never actually, obviously I left school early, and 2 relationships before John, I was in a very abusive relationship and I was in a very toxic relationship, which actually ended up with us going to court and stuff. It's messy.
The relationship itself?
Yeah.
Both were toxic and abusive, or one was abusive?
He was abusive to me.
And then the next one was toxic?
The next one was toxic, yeah. But during that time, I think this added to the strain with my mum and stuff, because that relationship where it was abusive, he actually cut me off from my family, and it started when I was in high school.
What do you mean by abusive, if you don't mind me Can I ask him, like, what was
all
it?
forms that you can think of, physically, mentally, verbally, psychologically, emotionally. Like,
This is it when you're in high school?
yeah, so he was 4 years older than me, so he was 19 and I was 16, which I look back on and I was like, you silly, silly girl. But he kind of cut me off from my family and made me think that he was like the next best thing. And because of the relationship I had with my mum at the time, like it got really bad when I was in high school, I clung on to him because I wanted a way out. I wanted to get out of the house. And I lived with him. So he lived with his mum and stuff. But I stayed with him and I basically lived with him until he got his own place. And at that time I was just like, what can I do to like get out of the house? What can I do to like not stay with him? Like as a way of like kind of slowly getting out if I can. Because I realised probably how bad it was. Eventually, like I kind of woke up and was like, what am I doing? So I went online and started looking at college courses because I wanted to actually do something with my life. And I realised I didn't want to work for my stepdad or like as part of that company anymore. First one that came up was sports development. And I was like, oh, I always love PE, like I always love sports. Like this is something I really wished I'd done better in was like try in school because I left with 2 hires and I think I've really not like discredited my chances of doing anything because I've always believed I will make something work no matter what it is, but I do think I should have gave myself more opportunities. So I applied for that course and straight for the HNC. I don't know what gave me the confidence, but delusion potentially. Like I just applied for the HNC. Somehow they let me in. I had an interview. Somehow I got in, and I thought, amazing. I can use this to like get out of the house because like there's nothing to say that I'm lying.
Did you reach out to anyone like during this time, like
No.
this relationship? No. Did you not feel
No.
confident enough to, or did you feel oblivious?
Yeah, well, there was that, and like obviously I didn't have my family. Like he cut me off from them. It made me think that I didn't need them, so I didn't have anybody to talk to. I'd made friends in college, but I had the emotional maturity back then not to just sit and be like, "Hi, I'm getting abused." Like I wasn't going to like tell them that. So I dealt with it, and I finished the 2 years in the degree, and then I decided that I wanted to change into more personal training rather than sports development. I had in my head when I was applying for the course, like, oh, maybe I could become a PE teacher or like something to do with like kids and stuff. But I think because I'd like obviously looked after my sisters, like that was hard. So I didn't like working with kids because of that. So then I went into personal training. I changed my degree. They let me do that as well. I went straight to the higher national diploma, the HND, in a different course. And I finished that. And then lockdown had hit. So before like I'd changed courses was when we'd ended, but it was like the way in which we ended was by me phoning the police eventually, having the confidence to do so.
What gave you the confidence?
So we were in a night out. I was underage, obviously, like I couldn't get into any pubs or anything, but he could. So when he got kicked out the pub, I had finished work and he'd text me saying, like, because he was steaming, and he was like, you need to come get me. I was like, come get you how? Like, I don't drive. But I think he meant like get him from where he was, go on the subway, get home. So literally finished work, finished my evening shift, locked up, went and got him, went from Paisley to Glasgow to get the subway to where he was in Partick.
The age of 16, 17?
Mm-hmm. At that time of night. Got him. Found him, should I say. Absolutely wrecked. Absolutely steaming. And when he was like drunk, that's when it was worse. So he's just like, I remember he was just shouting. It's funny because I'm like, why are you being an idiot? He was like shouting at me in the street. I had literally came and got him and he was pure shouting abuse at me in the street. So got him back to the flat, and then I'd had a suspicion that he was like seeing somebody behind my back. Like I had this full on suspicion that he was like cheating on me. So I'd had this for a while because he kept being quite protective of his phone and stuff. So when we got back to the house, I was knackered. I was like, I'm going to bed. I just let him do his own thing. And then he comes in, still absolutely wrecked, and was like, I'm meeting so-and-so, I'll be back soon. Like, fully said her name. And I was like, what? going where? Like, where are you going? Oh, just to hers. Why? And then because I questioned him, he didn't like that. I was like, okay, so if is it just her? Is there going to be friends there? He's like, oh no, it's just her. Like, because he was absolutely wrecked. And I was like, oh, I'll come then. He's like, no, you stay here. Like, straight away, he was like, no, you stay here. I was like, no, I want to come. Because, like, if this is just a friend and she knows me, then I'll come too. And then that's when the argument started. And he, like, flung me against the wall. And a rib cracked because of how hard he flung me. I fell down and then he went out the door. And I thought, at that moment, I just lay there and I was like, I need my stepdad. So I phoned him first.
Were you ever scared?
Terrified. But I phoned my stepdad and I was shaking. He probably still remembers this conversation, but I was shaking on the phone and I was like, all I could say, because I was so winded, like from my rib and stuff, was, I'm hurt. That's all I kept saying. He was like, what do you mean you're hurt? I was like, this was like 2 a.m. I was like, I'm hurt. I need you to come in the house. I need you to come to so-and-so's house. And he was like, right, okay, I'm coming. No questions asked, just let him, right, I'm coming. Like, he knew where he stayed. And I hadn't spoke to him in like months, but he was still there. Still straight there. I then phoned the police and said that I'd been assaulted by my partner.
Did he talk you into that, to doing that, or was
No,
that
I
something in your
just did
head you were ready to do?
Because I don't know, I think it was just fight or flight mode, but I was just pure like, I need to get out of this. So, phoned the police, they came to the house. They had to find him because I didn't know where she stayed. I just knew her name. And I just gave them all the details, told them what had happened.
Is this the first time that it came to physical?
No, this was the worst type of physical. Right. But he'd done other things, like, it was mad because, like, my mum used to do this too. Like, he would throw TV remotes at me and stuff when he was annoyed. My mum used to do that.
So you just thought it was normal?
Yeah. So, like, behaviours that I thought were okay, like, they just weren't. So that was probably the first time it'd come to, like, a real physical assault, like, where I was physically injured. Got checked over in the hospital and stuff, and thankfully, like, nothing else was wrong, but they can't really do anything for a rib. They just need to heal. Just need to let it heal. So I got all my stuff and I left, and I slept on a mattress on the floor in the living room, like where my mum and that stayed before, and I was still doing my college thing at this time. The day after that happened, I went to college because that was my coping mechanism, and I knew that I had to make something of my life, that I just couldn't not go. And I didn't tell anybody about it. I didn't have any sleep. I just went to college. And then went back. Slept on the mattress on the floor. Went to college. Repeat. Then he was released on bail. And one of the conditions was he didn't talk to me. Still talked to me. Still tried to talk to me.
What was that conversation like? Was it apologetic?
No.
Or was it?
He was like, can't believe you've done this.
Right.
Like, why would you phone the police? You've ruined my life. Like, stuff like that. Why would you do this? I thought you loved me. Like, stuff like that. And then it got apologetic, like, after the anger had died down, then it got apologetic. Then it was stuff like, I'm really sorry. I would never do this to you. I would never mean to hurt you. I don't want it to end like this. Please come back. Blah, blah, blah. And I just ignored it.
How long was this relationship? Sorry.
So I met him through a friend of a friend, and then we messaged on Instagram when I was about 15. Then when I turned 16, and obviously after all the shenanigans with my karate, that's when I kind of leaned on him for support, I guess, because I was talking to him. And then throughout school, we would, like, I'd message him. He was in college at the time, so we'd, like, message back and forth. Obviously, he was a lot older than me, so, like, that is what it is.
Yeah, so, like, hearing this story, you always hear, I mean, it's crazy when you're actually, I've got someone across, because I've not had anyone in my life that's been kind of affected by, like, physical abuse, but you hear about it, and they always talk about toxic masculinity and all this sort of stuff, and this is something that, like, is so cowardly for a man to do this and kind of hide behind these dominance of whatever. What does this do for you in terms of like your perception of dating, of having a boyfriend, having a guy in your life? Is how your stepdad's seen as a role model, does that overpower that, or are you kind of starting to become quite frightened of men, I guess, in a sense?
Yeah, I was scared of guys for a long time. Even the relationship after that, I feel like I got into that one too soon. That was when I was going through my fitness and exercise, HND.
Mm-hmm.
So all the court stuff had happened. He ended up just getting community service because there wasn't any witnesses bar me and him. So he still walks about to this day, which is what it is. You know, the court system is what it is. So I'd was going through my diploma, and then my friend had actually made, my friend in the college at the time had made me a Tinder profile, as a joke. Just to have a laugh and see, because we would play games in college, like Hot or Not, and all these childish games.
To be young again, eh?
No, I know. So yeah, I was 18 at this point, and I'd met my boyfriend after that. It was a very fast relationship, and we'd literally met, got together really quickly, went on holiday 2 months in, then broke up in the space of 6 months. It was very fast. And looking back, it was toxic on both sides. I hadn't healed, and he was very overpowering, I guess would be the word. So he had loads of girl pals, but if I had a boy pal, that was an issue.
It's double standards.
Yeah. And again, me thinking that behaviour was normal, didn't really question it. So I kind of kept myself to myself when it came to college, and I stuck to the friends that I had, which also made me not talk to guys, which then kind of increased that fear of men even more.
Like any guy that speaks to you,
yeah,
just try to fire into you type of thing.
Yeah, I was nasty, and it's one of the things I do regret is it was a defence mechanism, but I was nasty to guys. Even if they turned out to be okay, my straight up defence was get away from me, don't speak to me, don't even look at me actually. So yeah, that was quite turbulent. It was very, very fast, and looking back, that was a bad idea. I should never have went into that.
Why do you think you did?
Because I wanted to be with someone, I wanted to feel loved. That's something that I felt I had missed.
Did you experience it, do you think?
It did make me feel loved at the time, but I'll never know if any of it was real because of how he was. Not long after we broke up, he also got into another relationship with somebody that he worked with, so there was also that speculation of were you seeing her at the same time? So I felt like I'd been cheated on again. Yeah, so
there's a ton of betrayal happening throughout your life.
Yeah.
What does it look like when you meet John? What does your healing process look like, and then how does that happen?
Do you know, me and John have spoke about this so much, but I really regret how I started speaking with him. Because of how frightened I was of guys, John was nearly not with me when we first met up for a date. It took me a couple of hours to even talk to him. He was the one talking to me. How did
it come about?
I just warmed up to him.
No, I mean how did the first date come about? How did you meet? Right, okay.
So I kept Tinder out of spite, I suppose, from the last relationship. The guy was also from Cumbernauld, so that kind of introduced me to Cumbernauld in a way, and that's where I live now, ironically. So I was in the gym. This is when I properly started taking my fitness seriously as well, and that was probably a coping mechanism from everything, was that was my safe space. And I was working on myself. I was in the gym and someone had super liked me. I was like, I've never had this before. This is exciting.
I'm so disconnected with this. I only know about super likes because of James.
Yeah, so super like is when someone really, really likes you, so they've swiped up.
Right.
Not just right, but up.
Wow.
So
again, it's tapping into an insecurity years of wow, God, someone's really interested in you.
Someone loves me. I'm
do you think
validated.
that's why you kept Tinder? For
the validation, definitely. Yeah. So that's one thing I've never really felt in my life is pretty. I've never felt like I'm a good looking person because I was never told. I never had the confidence installed in me growing up. I see all the time on TikTok now, like mums saying to their kids affirmations, and I'm like, I love that. Like, that's so powerful. Never had that when I was wee. My mum was very, very overcritical of how I looked, obviously because I was of overweight as a child, and I think she thought that reflected her as a parent.
Yeah.
So
which it does.
It probably does, yeah.
But the way to combat that, this is what I mean. Like I was going to ask you a question earlier on about like the parents. What do you think they stand in terms of how they raise their kids from for the food that they eat to the exercise that they do? But I think our mums and dad generation, they were never equipped with that because the age of social media, like we didn't have information, so it was like, oh, what's the government saying? Oh, don't eat fat, like, don't do this.
The education around nutrition now is amazing. It was never like that, like even 10 years ago. So I think it's forever evolving, but I just don't think my mum had ever been taught and had never known what healthy eating was.
Yeah.
So I can't blame her for that. And I think a lot of parents now are in the same boat. They're not educated. They're just trying to have a easy life. And if it makes their kid happy, they want to do that.
Yeah, that's
so
what
if that means really taking them to McDonald's and having a chicken nugget Happy Meal, they'll do that. Like, they're not wanting to be told, like, this is what they should be having. Like, it's very overwhelming, you know, and because they care about their kids, like, I work with a lot of mums, and, like, it's very overwhelming to be told all this information, and they'll probably feel like they're a bad parent if they don't give their kids, like, something that's not green and colourful and on a plate that's, like, a salad, like, you know, and a lot of parents just want an easy life. They just want peace and quiet, especially during the school holidays, and I don't blame them, and my mum was probably the same.
And you probably don't want to see any sadness from your kid, like all their friends are getting the McDonald's, for example, and this is the hard thing to communicate to anyone. The McDonald's in itself, it's not a bad thing. And it's like, it's like, well, okay, I can just have it, and it's like, it's very individualised on how someone can respond to that, and that's really what we
and that's the thing with my gran as well. Like, if I told her I like pizza, she'd give me that for lunch every day.
I know.
Do you know what I mean? So it was just one of those things where it's like everything in moderation, but again, she's of a generation that did not know about that. So yeah, I'd never really been told, like, you're beautiful, or like, this is what we're going to do today, like, hold yourself high, like, even when I was going into puberty and stuff, like, I was very self-conscious of how I looked, and, like, very particular about weight categories with karate, and, like, fitting into clothes and being around girls in school who were, like, quite slim. I ended up being one of the slimmest in my year in high school because of an eating disorder, and all of that was going around in my head, so I had never had the validation of, like, being told I was worthy and being told I was good enough, because from whether it was myself or other people, I was always being inflicted with, like, bad things about myself. So I use Tinder for the validation, and I think most people will say that. Like, it feels good when someone, like, is attracted to you. It feels good when someone wants to talk to you. It's like a wee bit of dopamine. It's like when you order something online, you're like, oh yes, I get a parcel today. That's what it feels like when you're in a message with somebody, like, yeah, somebody wants to talk to me today. Like, it's nice.
What was the first line John hit out with?
He sent me a gif.
what was the gif?
You know the gif when she pulls the covers back and is like, tap tap.
Oh, right.
In bed. Aye, that was his gif.
Wow.
And I laugh at him.
Smooth
now.
player, eh?
Aye, I laugh at him now. He messaged me first, so that was the first thing he sent me, was that gif. And we were just chatting back and forth, and the first thing that drew me to him was, like, he was 20 and I was 19 at the time. He was so driven, so switched on, like, wanted so much for his life. And that really made me question my own life, because I had gotten into the college crowd, and it was probably the bad crowd where drugs and alcohol was involved, raves were involved. I asked John, one of the first conversations we had on the phone, if he wanted to go to Terminal V.
He's like, oh, I've swiped up on the wrong person here.
He was like, no, Bex, I'll pass. So that was the kind of scene that I was into at the time. Regret it fully now, but it was just one of the things you did when you were younger, I suppose. I'm actually surprised I'm still alive. Some of the things that we got up to. So it made me re-question everything I was doing.
The first positive influence, you think, from a career perspective?
Yeah.
Did you know what career meant?
I didn't have a clue at the time. I just knew that I was going to have to try and make something work, and that's all I was being focused on.
Was PTing on the cards then? Is that where you're bright? Because I don't know, I remember starting the college journey very similar to you, but I dropped out in took this cash in hand job because I was like, I like money more.
Yeah.
And that's where I kind of parted ways. I can't remember what that looked like from a college perspective. I don't know what they influenced, but I remember writing down a training program.
Yeah.
And we were trying to train each other.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. This would be cool to do. And then it was like, but I can make £100 a week.
Yeah, so PT was never really on the cards for me until lockdown. And it's because I had a pathway of going to uni. And I was determined to go to uni because I would be one of the first in my family to do so. And again,
Is this because you wanted to prove something?
Yeah, it was out of spite. Like, I wanted to go to prove something. And I had an offer for Stirling to go into like third year, but I rejected it because lockdown hit. And because of when lockdown hit, I had to finish my last of my course, the last 3 months online, which I hated. I don't like online learning. I like doing things. Probably what makes me a good coach now is like I teach people in a way that I like to learn. I don't learn just by someone telling me what to do. I need someone to show me. I need to understand it. I need to be engaged and I need to learn in a way that's easy for me. So online was not good at all. Scraped through, passed my dissertation, then got an offer. And I thought to myself, I don't think I actually want to go to uni and have to be online for all this. That does not appeal to me. And I can go back to uni anytime I want to. I just don't want to do it right now. So I decided to pursue PT. And it was actually John that had an influence on that because he was going to uni and he hated it. Like, he'll tell you.
So you seen a wee bit of the light? You seen a little bit of like what that life was going to look like?
Like, he hated it. So like, he was going to do accountancy, but like, he obviously started his business now. So I was kind of influenced by that, and I was like, right, I want to try and make this work. So lockdown had hit, and I was staying with him at the time. So my business actually started from Alison's back garden because I'd done all these virtual Zoom classes. 30 people on one call at one point. It was fantastic.
How did you get these people?
Just by promoting it on Instagram. Everybody wanted something to do. Everybody was always on social media at that time because we couldn't leave our house. So the neighbours must have looked out the window and thought, what an absolute loony. I'm pure jumping about in the garden, doing all these classes, like having the time of my life. And it was such a good time to do stuff.
Is this when you started monetising it?
I did it for free. For the first few months I did it for free because I wanted the experience of like coaching people. So I never was on a gym floor when I started. My whole experience was online from the get-go.
What did it feel like when you started?
Terrifying.
No, like when you started like seeing 30 people. Obviously that's going to be scary. But did you get a buzz from it? What was the feeling like of like the purpose, the fulfillment? Like
I did feel a lot fulfilled, and I kind of again got that validation of like people like me. Like I'd never had felt liked, and like throughout my whole life, like school or even in careers or anything like that, relationships and stuff, family. So to see 30 people on a Zoom call who actively wanted to do stuff. Obviously, I'd been documenting my fitness journey on Instagram as well, so people were already quite intrigued.
Yeah, actually, like how that following built up.
Yeah.
Was there any self-sabotage throughout this at the start? So obviously we self-sabotage when it comes to our fitness journeys, but we don't really think about what we do in our career journeys.
Yeah, so I kind of had a bit of imposter syndrome when I first started. I was like, oh, I don't know if I'll make this work. Like, I still had my student loan coming in, and I had like the last payment, and that was me. Like done with college essentially. And I kind of like said, I remember like just pure sitting in John's bedroom at the time, like just pure bawling my eyes out. And he remembers this as well, like just bawling my eyes out, being like, I don't know what to do. I have nothing. He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, you're going to do this. He's like, you're going to start this. Start it now. Get ahead of everybody else and see where it goes. He's like, when the gym's open again, I'll speak to Jamie and see if we'll get you a job at the gym. But just do this now. Like, just get through this period now. So that's what I did. Every day, morning, night, 2 Zoom classes for free. Put people through their paces from my exercise to music qualification so I could go off that. Whatever people had in their house, they would use. Whether it was kettlebells, dumbbells, resistant bands, we'd make it work.
Milk
bottles, water bottles, children, dogs, whatever, doesn't matter. And then we did that. And I did that. That kept me going through the months that I lived with him. And it's one of the things I always respect Alison for as well, because she was trying to work too. Like, she was trying to work for home, and she's on meetings and I'm put outside. But it was good because I had that safe space to do it.
Yeah.
Then when the gyms had reopened, like one of John's best friends, Jamie, who worked in the gym, it used to be the exercise for less, but then during the lockdown, like JID bought over them. So he spoke to the manager at the time and was like, know somebody who is really looking for a PT position. Here's our number. Like, really put a good word in for me because he contacted me straight away. And then that was my first one-to-one job. And I started advertising for one-to-one coming into that space. Then they kept shutting and opening. So I had to do online. Like, I had to get to grips with that very quickly because I knew that it was going to be the case of, like, the gyms were very inconsistent. So my first kind of PT was straight away online, and then learned more from the gym floor and learned to love the gym floor a lot more. Then they shut down to kind of go under maintenance and go under JD instead of exercise for less. Like, that was completely gone. Now more people came in to be PTs, and like, it was a very toxic atmosphere. It ended up being, like, over the years. I was there for 3 years until the start of January 2023. It was just like a really bad mentality of people, like, very close-minded, didn't want to retire, like as I was saying to you earlier. And it was one of those ones where, like, was starting to develop emotional maturity and was starting to unwire myself from all of my trauma and unwire myself from all of my past teachings that I had learned of, like, limiting beliefs. And so I was starting to open my eyes to all these people around me that was, like, close-minded and how I used to be, like, very negative and stuff. And it's not who I wanted to be around. I never felt comfortable taking my clients in. They didn't see anybody kicking about the gym except me. Like, I was always the one going out to speak to people. I would chip in with cleaning if I could. Like, I was helping out at the front. I just wanted to be on the floor as much as possible so people could see me. But everybody else just kind of kept themselves to themselves. They had their own cliques. And I just didn't really feel comfortable there. I didn't feel like I belonged. I felt like it was high school all over again.
Yeah. Do you think that was bringing up some of the past then for you?
Yeah, definitely.
So it must have been quite weird, because if John's building his business, knowing what I know of him now, like, he's building a team of, or building a community of people, of all these guys that are thinking bigger and better and just thinking beyond the future rather than the day-to-day. And then your mindset's kind of going along this path, and then the environment you're going into, though, it doesn't seem to be aligned with that at all.
No, it wasn't. But fair play to me, and I'll give myself a pat on the back for this. Like, I didn't drive at this time. I passed my test last year, and I would go to work. I lived half an hour walk away, so I'd get up 4:30 in the morning, and I'd leave at 5 in the morning to get there for the gym opening at 5:30 for staff coming in. First client at 6. Take all my clients. It would be like a 13-hour day, and I couldn't go back to my house or anything. I just had to, like, cut out. And I wouldn't come back until, like, after 6 at night.
Yeah, so you put in the graft.
I did that for years.
Why do you think that was something you were so committed to, out of all the things you could have chosen to do?
I had nothing else. I had no choice but to make it work. Like, it was either I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. Like, I could never work with anybody else again. I had to make this work. Like, I'd built it out of something that was purely by accident, but it turned out to be the best thing for me. And I never seen myself doing anything else. I still don't. Like, this is what I feel I was born to do, to help people and be that person that they needed in their corner and that I needed in my corner when I was young. And I just wanted to help people. I've always had this drive and passion to help people. And I just think to myself, like, if you have a passion, why would you not do that? Like, why would you not do it every day? Why would you not put in the effort? And it just got me up in the morning every single day. And I just had a choice. You know what I mean?
That's good. Aye, so you can definitely tell then where your resilience comes from and where that empowerment word comes from. Yeah. Kind of one last question just on the relationship side of things then. Did you find yourself trying to sabotage the relationship with John at all?
Yeah, I guess a few times.
What comes to mind? Like, what were some of the things you tried to do?
We actually took a break in 2022, like in the summer, because of how bad it was. Like, how bad I pushed him away, like, when I think about it, because it's almost like I wanted to push people away before they did for me. Like, I wanted to hurt them before they hurt me. Something I've also worked through in therapy. But yeah, like, I went for a family holiday up near Dundee, like in the lodges for, I think it was his mum's birthday. It might have been his mum's birthday or somebody's birthday, I can't remember. But we went there and it was like Me, John, his mum, her fiance, his kid, his girlfriend at the time, and then his mate, and John's gran, like other family, his sister, her boyfriend at the time. Like, it was a big family thing, and we just argued the whole time. Like, we just argued the whole time, and it was just like stupid stuff that I was like looking back now, thinking, why did I do that?
Do you think you instigated it?
Oh, for sure. He didn't do anything wrong. It was literally all me. Like, and it was just, I think it was like, looking back, it was because he was part of a family dynamic that was so positive. And I think there was part of a resentment in me there still, like selfishly, that like I would never wish what I went through on anybody. But like seeing happy families bothered me to the extent of like I would take it out on them.
Yeah, you want them to sit in the dirt with you almost.
Like I'd want misery loves company. Like I wanted them to feel what I felt. So probably like subconsciously I pushed them away and I pushed him away. And it got to a stage that when we came back, he kind of had to have the hard conversation of like, I think we need space. We took 3 weeks away from each other. And then...
What were those 3 weeks like for you?
Harrowing. Like, so bad. I was lost without him. And after the 3 weeks, we sat and we spoke. I had like got my own house and stuff by this point as well, so it wasn't like at my gran's or anything, thankfully, but I got my own house at this time, so he'd came over to my house and we spoke after the 3 weeks, and he was like, I need you to promise that you're going to work on yourself. If you don't work on yourself, we will not be together. And that's something that's rung through my head every day. Like, a lot of my self-development has been because of him. And it's not like I'm dependent on him in any sort of way. It's just like he's my soulmate, he's my life partner. I was genuinely lost without him. I don't know what would happen if anything happened to him. Like, something I'm still working on, like, because tomorrow you don't know what could happen. He could go out and get hit by a bus tomorrow, and I would need to be dependent on myself. But in the way that we hold each other, and the way that he's my rock, and the way that he is the glue for me now, like, I couldn't not do life with him. So I made the promise to myself, and that's when I went into therapy, that I was going to work on myself, and I did that, and he's been a big part of that. So without him, I probably would still be the shell of the person that I was, and he's changed me for the better, essentially, and we help each other now, we live together now. Like, it's been a big process to get there, but we were together 5 years this year, and in that time it's been a roller coaster. Like, a lot of good times, but equally like a lot of testing times, especially when we took that break.
Yeah, that's life, and I think this is really, which is it's very surprising that when someone says that to you, you kind of lean into it, and that's why I'm quite curious, like, why, knowing that the previous relationships you've had have been very toxic and very, I don't know what the word you would use to describe it. Yeah. It's not a good experience of what relationships are like. So when someone from, or your boyfriend at the time is like, look, if we're going to do this, I need you to do this. And I'm surprised that there was nothing in you that got your back up. It's like, no, I'll do what I want.
No, I think I was just defeated at that stage. Like, I'd lost all the ability to fight because I thought, what am I actually fighting? I think that was the realisation at that moment where I was like, when I had lost everything, I realised then I don't have anything to fight. What am I fighting? I've lost it all.
And then, so if you had to ask yourself at this point, like, what's things that you want to fight for? What was coming to your mind at this point?
I knew I wanted to fight for a relationship. Like, that was so important to me. I knew I wanted to fight for my younger self because she deserved that, and I knew that I wanted to fight for the life that I wanted. I didn't want to live in the victim headspace anymore. I was tired of it. It was so draining. My whole being was just sucked up with all this negativity and sadness and like blaming everything except my own actions and looking for a sign and not actually pursuing any action to change anything. I couldn't live like that anymore. And there's people that still do live like that, and I think they've yet to come to that realisation that it's just not worth it. I just couldn't live in the victim headspace, so that's what changed it all for me, where it's just like pure and utter defeat. Like, I just didn't want to live like that anymore. There wasn't like a time when I can pinpoint and say, yeah, that was a massive turning point. It was just me. It was just like, I don't want to live like that. I'm sick of living like this. It's like I'd exhausted myself of it. And that's when I realised there was nothing left to fight against. It was a lot to fight for.
That's what you wanted, yeah.
But like, there was a lot that I was like, yeah, I need to change. Otherwise, I'm going to essentially be alone. And that's where the abandonment kind of came in useful, because I was like, I'm not being alone. Like, this person is so good for me. They just like changed my life for the better. Why am I wanting to get rid of that?
What was the traits you're attracted to?
Just like his ambition, how headstrong he was, how sure he was of himself, even back then. So much more now, but just like how he loved me for me, and like didn't want to change anything about me. And there's always been a part of my life where like people have wanted to change me in some sort of way, whether it was my mum, whether it was people in my sport, whether it was people at school, people that I was friends with, ex-relationships. He didn't want to change any of me. He was quite happy with me as I was. And I could only get better in his eyes. He seen me as like a project where he was like, I know the real you is in there, and that's why I'm staying here to make it work. And that's one of the reasons why when we first met up as a date, our first ever date, he was like, although I could tell you're pushing me away, and I nearly did go away, I knew something was in there, and I knew you were someone that I wanted to be with. I just had to make you see it. So
it's a danger. I was going to say, it's the dangers of dating so young as well. Like, you would have heard me say in the podcast before, like, mine and Jillian's first date, we met 17, 18, and I took her out on the first date, and she was lucky if I get 2 words out of her. But I was like, I'm determined to know you more and explore that. And here we are, like 12 years later. So
that's how I was with John. Literally, like I remember we were going. Nando's was our first date, which I pure love. I love Nando's. And then the cinema, which is what it is.
Whereas was the Nando's, but it was the cinema. Mine was a 2-for-1. That was my kind of one-liner.
I think the cinema was his idea, because I just wasn't fucking talking. So the cinema it was. But when we were in the car, I was like I just like was deer in the headlights. So I shot myself. I was like, fuck, what did I say? Like, I'd never had a positive interaction with guys, so I was just purely.
Sounds like this is a first date experience for you, because like it sounds like your previous relationships like nurtured conversation through like social media.
Never had a date at
and it's
all.
like crazy.
Like that relationship, like 2 relationships ago, we'd never had a date. The relationship after that, brief date, not really, didn't really get to know each other, as I said, very fast. So this was like a proper date. And the funny thing is, he's never actually asked me out. We just decided it was a thing, which I pure respect, because like when you know, you know. After that date, we ended up spending 3 days together. So I went from not talking to him for like the first couple of hours
to opening up
to like
a bit life.
3 days later, we were still together. His mum's pure like, where are you? Who is this person? Why are you spending so much time with her? I remember like our first date, one of our first dates, he was driving and I was still drinking at the time. And we stayed out all night. He drove round the corner from where I was living at the time. And we slept in the car, and then he dropped me off at work the next day.
To hide it all.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I didn't want to tell anybody yet.
Yeah.
So I don't know how he made it home, honestly. I don't think he slept. But
yeah, that's what love will do to a guy.
That's it. Like, that just showed me though how much he was serious about wanting to get to know me. And that's what kind of instantly made me stay. Yeah,
it makes sense why he's such a strong couple now as well. Yeah. Like knowing like your history with everything as well, but also like something I think it's worth saying to you is like the mental resiliency, like what you've built. It's genuinely incredible, because there's a couple of choices that people will make in these situations, and yes, there's like the victim mentality, which you absolutely have had, but you've lent into it and you've made. I think if anything from your story, it's important that people learn. It doesn't matter what age you are when you hit this. It's like the point is you draw a line in the sand, you try to move forward for that.
Yeah.
Biggest turning point for you, is that then therapy then? Is that what opens your eyes a lot more, or is it just a combination of therapy, the right person in your life, and the community people you've got around you?
Definitely a combination of all that. Like therapy was a really good point. Like I understand it's not for everybody, but it definitely helped me in the sense of like I would never have known that the behaviours I went through weren't normal had my therapist not been like, that's not okay. And I spoke so nonchalantly about it because I'd kind of dissociated from it all. When I was telling her about everything, and because she was non-biased, that helped, because as much as John's there for me, he's not my therapist. He's not someone I need to emotionally dump on. even he's got a therapist that he talks to about stuff. You can't just use your partner as someone to like, I very, very strongly believe on this, like you can't just emotionally dump on your family and your partner all the time. Not only is that biased information that you're going to get back from them, they get drained too. It affects them. Whether they like to admit it or not, like everybody will take it home. So having that non-biased person to talk to about stuff who didn't know me, didn't know anything about my life, didn't know the people that I was with, briefly knew John, but not very much, like that helped. And when I was telling her about everything, she just was sitting there and she was like, are you okay? Like, she was like, I don't know if you're like putting on a front, which is normal and fine, or you've just totally detached from all this and are now immune to it all, but this is not okay. Like, this is not what a parent should do. This is not how they should act. And that's obviously not how you should act after what you went through. Like, none of that behaviour is all right. And that's when I started getting to understand that what my mum was doing was unacceptable.
What's the biggest lesson you've learned from therapy then?
That I was never a problem. Like, I was never the issue. Like, as much as I was made my whole life, like as I mentioned, that I was always feeling like I was the problem. She made me understand that it wasn't just me. And that was a big relief off my shoulders. The generational trauma, I learned so much from that. Coping mechanisms, I learned so much about that it still helped me to this day.
What are some of them?
So she goes through different things with me, or she did go through different things with me. Some of the things include tapping, so it's like EFT, it's called. Everybody has like pressure points in their body that can help calm them down in a situation where they feel stressed or volatile or vulnerable. So for some people, it's like their collarbones. You can like tap there. You can like tap your forehead in between your fingers, like on your body somewhere, and you just tap, and it grounds you, and brings you back to reality. Because I get panic attacks quite a lot, so that happens, and you calm down, and you can look around the room like that's a black door, that's a colourful carpet, and you just look around and you're like, that's a purple light. Like, you just look around and tell yourself where you are whilst you're tapping, and it stops the panic. So we worked through some of that. We worked through a lot of visualisation and playing memories in my head and scoring them out of 10 for how much they affected me. Talking about the situation, remembering the memory. Okay, how do you feel now? Like, just actually pinpointing things in my life.
What did that do for you though? Like putting a score against it? So
putting a score against it, it tells her how much it still affects me and what to work on. Then the next time we revisit it, tell me that aversion events again. How does it make you feel now? That was a way of seeing how I was coping with my development. If certain memories propped up, we could visit them. But it was also to help me come back to earth and not dissociate from everything that had happened in like my childhood, because that's one of the things I did struggle with telling her, was because I blocked all of it out. So when we were talking, things would prop up and she would like, wait, tell me how that made you feel. How did that make you feel? What do you feel about this now? Like, and it helped me like remember things, because that's what trauma does. Trauma makes you forget things. So it helped me remember things and helped me come to terms with what I had to work on, and also what that meant for me, and like how that made me feel, how that added to how I coped with that, and how it made me feel as an adult. Like, if something happened in my childhood, did that have a significant part in how I am now as an adult? Did that happen in a really bad time in my life where it could have been a domino effect for other things? So we just revisited those. She also worked through different types of confrontation management and how to deal with hard conversations, especially when it came to when I was still talking to my mum, learning how she was as a person, understanding her behaviours and like her generational trauma. Like, it opened up so many avenues for me, like, that she helped me with. And we would do like eye movement stuff as well. So she would get like a pen, and it was almost like a form of hypnosis. It's like, you follow this pen and you just keep following it, and she's like, I want you to replay something that happened, and as you're replaying it in your head, I just want you to visualise how you feel in that moment, what you would say to yourself, and how you're going to deal with that now. Like, what is the solution? So that was really helpful as well, because it encourages you to not sit in your pity party. And that's something that I was like I don't know, like the word for it, but I was maybe guilty, I suppose, of doing, was like just sitting in my pity party, like, woe is me, like, because that was the victim mentality that I had. So actively looking for solutions was a big part of therapy as well. And it helps me with like problem solving now. Whenever I face something that's like business related or like something that happened in my life where I can be like, right, this happened, this is how I'm going to deal with it. I'm not sitting in my pity party because that doesn't solve anything. So like there was a lot of good things that came out of it, and I'm forever grateful that I started it.
It sounds like a transformative part of your self-development journey, if you want to kind of bolster it on there. Yeah. What's some of your dreams or wishes and things that you were wanting when you were younger? What did you want to be when you were older?
So I had like so many different career changes. My family still make a joke about it. Like I was forever changing career choices. I was like, I don't know what I want to be, but I loved animals when I was younger, and I still do. Like whenever I see a dog in the street, I'm like, oh my God, there's a dog. I pure love them. So I wanted to like work with animals for a wee bit when I was younger. Wanted to be a vet, wanted to be a marine biologist, then discovered I was terrified of the sea, so maybe not. I just knew I wanted to work with animals because at that time in my life I thought they were better than people. And then I kept that in my head that I wanted to do that up until I was in high school. And then I didn't really know what I wanted to do in high school. I was just thinking about leaving. Like that's all I would think about every day. Like
just can't wait to get out.
Just can't wait to leave. But I remember when I was younger, like that was like working with animals was something I wanted to do. And then I had this notion that I might want to work with kids because I'd had that experience. But then obviously, as I mentioned, working with kids kind of, because I'd already looked after my sisters, it was difficult, it was hard. I felt like I'd been a parent already. So I had no patience for it. So I then went into working with adults, and then that's when I realised I was like, I want to coach people. I want to change people's lives because I've changed my life. And I don't have the answers to everything. Like, I'm so young. Like, who would listen to me? But then again, what I have been through, like, I know what it feels like, and I have probably worked through so much in therapy in order to help people. So I see myself as being some sort of life coach to start with. But then obviously going through fitness, I realised how much that can transform people's headspace and how much that can change their life for the better.
So talk about your fitness journey, because this is like, I think it's crazy to think of the relationship you've been in with like previous boyfriends and stuff, because you're definitely stronger and fitter than some of these guys, and if that had to happen to now, I don't think
back then I was thin as anything. But,
so where do you find lifting weights? Where's the love for that? Because you're incredibly strong.
So I think I've always been really athletically strong due to like doing martial arts. Like you have to have good strength for that, and our training did include weights, it did include conditioning, and it did include like ab working mobility. So you did have a lot of fitness when it came to karate. So I started dabbling in weights when I was probably maybe as soon as I left karate, like 16 I want to say, and I went to, like, there was a gym around the corner from my house, and I went in and I got an induction, and I had no clue what to do. I was just purely like, this is not a mat and punching somebody. Don't know what I'm doing here. But I actually ended up working with like a PT when I was like 16, and it was like part of the induction in your membership at the time. You got like a couple of like sessions from them. And after doing some stuff, I was like, do you know what? I actually really like this. Well, this feels good. Like, I feel strong. And that's my kind of first memory I have of the gym being like really positive, thankfully. And then I started doing like classes. Part of me trying to rebuild a relationship with my mum was going to like classes together. So we'd go to like body pump and like Les Mits, and was it Les Mills? I don't know, one of those ones. And like the boot camps and all that. And that's when I realised like how many feel good endorphins I had. Like when you do exercise, it's quite hard, and you finish it and you're like, oh, I feel good, amazing. Like that's
what's your body image like at this point? And because obviously that's where most of the bullying's came from. Is it okay-ish, or
I had an eating disorder. Like I didn't realise it at the time, but looking back I definitely did. I was obsessed with like keeping myself as skinny as possible. And I think as much as I used the gym as like something to cope from leaving the club, I think I also used it to fuel exercise and keeping myself really slim, because I had that in my head as well. I was like, oh, I'll go to the gym then.
What did that disorder look like?
Binge eating, and then I would be sick. So I was probably on the scale for bulimia. So I would my mum was always in these fad diets, like, I don't know if you know the Special K diet, but it was
Aye.
like 2 bowls and then
It's
you'd have
mental.
dinner. So she would have
Women in
stuff
the
like
red dress
that.
and all that.
Yeah, so she would have stuff like that. And she'd always be at Slimming World, and like she would always be on a diet. And I'd knew of dieting since I was probably like really young, when I started the karate club at like 6 or 7. Like, I knew of dieting because I was trying to lose weight because I was chubby. So my mum was always in these diets, and she kind of like encouraged it. Like, you know, if I had a big lunch, she'd be like, oh, we'll just not have dinner then. We'll just maybe have a wee something. Or like, if we had something for breakfast, it was quite greasy, she'd be like, make sure you cut the fat off that bacon, make sure you leave some. Like, we don't need to eat all of that. That's too much.
See where you're at now in life, being the PT, being the coach. Is anything still there? Like, where do you see trigger points coming out, or is there anything at all?
Like, when I am on like a cut, like for example, I have to watch I don't get obsessed with MyFitnessPal, and that's something I'll always encourage my clients as well. Like, I don't track all the time. Like, I'll track when I'm aiming towards something, or if I'm doing an event like High Rocks when I need to be eating a certain amount for fuel, that's when I'll track. If I'm not having a particular goal, I don't track. It makes me feel 10 times better.
Yeah,
and keeps my relationship good with it.
good. So where do you start lifting heavy? Where does that come into play?
Probably when I started recovering from like what I suspect now was bulimia. Like, I got to the stage where I was so weak and I was hardly eating, and I just felt nauseous all the time. So this is where my gran's overfeeding comes in handy. I actually started spending more time with my gran. So what I would do is I would go to the gym and I'd go and visit my gran for lunch, and then she'd feed me millions, which was fantastic because I needed that. And then the next time I went to the gym, I felt myself getting stronger. Like, I felt myself lifting more. I put 2 and 2 together and I was like, that's the food. That's the fuel. So that's what I would do. And I'd hide this from my mum. So I'd go to the gym, go to my gran's, cup of tea, hunters of food, go and lift strong and heavy. Self-taught myself on a lot of things like deadlifts, squats.
Oh, you pick compound movements. Where does your head go? Like, why these movements?
It's something that I'd seen in the gym.
You just think that looks cool, looks badass.
And I kind of, a part of me was like, why can't I, if they can do it, I can do it. Like, why can't I do that? So I'd take myself up to the lifting platform, Billy Big was, so I was, and I'd go up and I'd try it. And who cares if I look stupid, I'd still try it. I also had a friend who knew someone from school that was a PT that worked there, so he would like point me in some things, but most of it was self-taught. And I'd use the food that my gran had given me to like
feel it.
So I would just go and see what I could do. It was a lot of ego lifting at the start, terrible form,
usually
most likely.
That's the journey.
It made me feel strong, and that's when I realised like that was something I wanted to work on, and that's why I love it now. I still have it in my programme now. And a lot of it, as I say, is like self-taught and like things that we learned from college as well, like how to apply muscle building to like calorie surpluses and like how to lose body fat with calorie deficits, and then maintenance phases. We learned about all that, your body's energy systems. I was fascinated by all that and anatomy, so like that really helped. And I would just teach myself as I learned, and I would create programs for myself, and I loved getting. This is why I love programming now as a coach. I would get so creative with like different programs and see what worked. Didn't work, I'd fix it. Like if I get bored, I'd change it. And then we learned about periodization in college as well, and like specific seasons and stuff.
Yeah, you're like, oh, you don't just max out every session.
Yeah.
No, is that not what you do?
I know. Like, that's what I was doing. I was absolutely blown out of the water when I would train and when I would lift heavy, but at least I felt good. So that was probably like the first entrance into feeling strong and feeling powerful through weights, was like a way of coping that turned into something I wanted to keep. So I learned that, and then in college when we had a client for our dissertation, we had to like coach somebody to a goal. We got allocated like somebody random in the college.
Guinea pigs, isn't it?
Somebody from like IT.
It's like, not again, man, fuck's sake.
Who would get picked every year. And then I helped them get to their goal, and we had to like do a PowerPoint presentation on it. And then that's when I realised, like, yeah, this is me. This is my shit. Like, this is what I want to do. Because I managed to get wee Jan to what she wanted. I thought, why can I not do that for everybody else?
Yeah, so you start to enjoy the art of it all.
Yeah.
So you go into your streamlined corporate vision of PTing, which isn't quite what you probably had dreamt of. Do you come away from that, or do you go straight to JP's? Like, how does that happen?
So I'd obviously went to the JD gyms in Cumbernauld, and then I'd left in 2023, and I was part of a mentorship at the time that had like convinced me that I could go online. But
it's the dream life.
Well, it was portrayed as the dream, and fair play to those that make it work. I respect it, but it was lonely for me.
Yeah, I think it is for most. I think
it was really lonely for me. John and his mum, God love them, made a plan for me to like go from 1-to-1 to online. They'd laid it all out. I showcased this to my mentor at the time, and he was like, no, do it now. I was like, what? He was like, you need to do it now. It's like, if you delay it, it's just going to make it worse. She's like, you need to do it now. So I was kind of like forced into going online, I suppose, and I thought it was the dream.
Were you paying full rent at JD, or did you gradually? Did you move to that?
Yeah, so I was £400 a month for JD rent. I think it's more now.
Six. I think
it's like
20 or something, 600.
Like that. I know like Pure Gym and that can be upwards of £600. So we were actually quite good for our rent. I'm $350 now in JP's, which is fantastic.
Was it just, why did you go down the full rent option? Were you just like, here, like I went to
because
people?
The way it was in JD was like you could do hours for them for free and not pay rent, but that was 15 hours a week that you had to work for free, which was a lot of time that I didn't have. Like I was a fully booked 1-to-1 personal trainer. And
that was just off the back of what you'd done during lockdown?
Yeah.
So you had the interest there, yeah.
So I couldn't have done service hours. I was very fortunate that because I came from Exercise for Less that they just put me on the rent model for JD.
So there was no like, you have to do,
but
prove
it was
your
mad.
time.
Like see, even when you were on service hours, you had to like prove that you were worthy of going on rent. You had to like showcase your business model.
I remember one of the
JD
managers of East Kilbride, I think it was, he used to tell us that there was PTs that were getting annoyed because they want to go full rent.
Yeah, and they couldn't.
But they have to like put forward a business plan. I think James had to do it when he went down there as well.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how they try and control.
So
what was it like going from that to online, then making the decision, here, I need to coach people in person?
So it was in October where we had just come back from a month in Spain, and
I guess firstly, what was that like? Because that's like
amazing.
When you're dreaming
lifestyle, chef's kiss. I would live there.
Because that's a dream that you're being sold to.
Yeah.
And I say you're being sold to. We all like, that's never going to not sound good to anyone. Have a business that is completely remote and you can work anywhere in the world. So you're like, yeah, fuck it, I'll go to Spain.
Yeah. So it'd been a plan for a while. John had originally planned to do it with like the staff from YNL, but things had happened, people had pulled out, and he said, do you want to do it? And I was like, yeah, like, absolutely. Had my 24th over there as well, it was lovely. But we stayed in Alicante, and the apartment was amazing, to be fair. They couldn't have done any more for us. Like, they were fantastic. I would go back. The weather was beautiful, and the community was beautiful. The gym was like literally at our doorstep. There was also a gym in the apartment. It was great. The food was so fresh, like the Mediterranean lifestyles. I understand why they live as long as they do. It made me look at westernised lifestyles so much. But after we'd been out there for a month, I said to John, I was like, I really want to go back to 1-to-1. And he was like, why do you want that? And I was like, because I'm lonely. I don't have any other online coaches I can talk to. Obviously, I left my mentorship because I felt like I could get everything out of them that I could have at that time.
Did you click with any coaches in the space?
I did with a few of them, but I think as much as they don't like to admit it, they're all there to try and be better than one another. It's a very competitive space, and it's very cliquey. So again, reminded me of high school, like everything comes back to that. But I just felt like it wasn't for me, and I just felt really lonely. Like I didn't have anybody I could speak to, and I didn't feel like my clients were really benefiting from the online only side of things. Like I felt like they needed it more than I did as well. Coincidentally, they had tagged me in a post that JP had made looking for a female PT, because
I do remember that post.
Caroline was going on maternity to have Harper. So they had to fill her space essentially while she was away. Well, that was his intention anyway. But then obviously he's decided to keep me, which is amazing. JP.
See you, mate.
So yeah, they tagged me in that because I'd heard of JP's gym before, but I'd never been. I'd heard of it. I heard it was amazing, but I'd never been. So my clients were on the lookout because I'd told a few of them that I was thinking about coming back. I just doesn't know
where to go.
Mm-hmm. And they were like, "Oh, let me tag you in this." So JP had seen like all my clients tagging me and was like, "Who is this person?" So I reached out and I was like, "Hiya, like, obviously a lot of my clients have tagged me in your post." I didn't ask them to do that, by the way. They're just because they're looking out for me. He's like, "Oh, that's really good to your clients. Like, let me see if I can get you in for a wee chat." So I ended up chatting to him start of November. Spoke to him for ages. Like, we had a lot of the same values. I respect him a lot as a person and what he's made of himself. Like, he literally made that gym all by himself, still does. Like, he's the handyman, he's the kit organiser.
What's the values?
Like, he's just as driven as I was. Like, we had a lot of the same things that we agreed on in terms of business, in terms of he's coached before, he's seen my vision, he made me feel validated, and as a woman in the space and in the industry, he's seen the struggles firsthand and he wanted to help that. And he said to me, not even like a day later, he was like, "I've had a think between you and another girl. I think you're the best fit. Like, you're welcome to start whenever is best." So I've been there since November. And since I've joined, I've became more involved with High Rocks because of Jonathan. So he asked me to join a class one day, purely by chance. And he was actually the one that got me into all the High Rock stuff.
So that's how you're a hybrid athlete now.
Oh, yeah.
One of them.
I run and lift. Yes. But without him and JP, I think my life would be very sad and lonely right now. And I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to, and still do, obviously, to bring my clients in. They like the gym. They like the environment because it's a private gym. It's not as noisy as your commercial gyms, and they feel safe there.
Yeah.
And that's all I want.
How many clients did you have online during Spain time then?
25, I want to say. I'd lost a lot, obviously, because I was going online at the time.
What was like the goals that you were driving towards, and then realising that those goals, because this is what I'm assuming's happened, it's like you're doing this online thing that's like, right, what's next? More clients online, more time behind a desk. I'm not liking this fucking life.
So because of the mentorship, I had this like arbitrary number of like monetary value in my head that I wanted to reach a certain income.
What was it?
I wanted to get to the stage where I was earning over like $5,000 a month.
Right. Usually goes 5, 7, 10, 15, 20, whatever it is.
That's essentially what it was. And I think with online it is portrayed as the dream, but nobody tells you like how lonely it can be. You're literally on a laptop most of the day. And then you have to go out. But then when you're out, you're always thinking in the back of your head, I need to get back to work. I need to do this for this client.
It's a balancing act, isn't it?
Yeah, it's hard. Like,
now, in fairness, you need to have a goal to be driving towards.
Yeah.
What's like your mission now?
To empower as many women as possible, but also to build them from the ground up, in the sense that if it's someone who comes to me and they are a beginner, I want them to feel what I felt when I tried weights for the first time. Like, wow, this is amazing. Like, this could potentially make me feel so much better about things and change my health and help me live longer. And my mission has always been for empowerment. Like, but even before I was empowerment PT, I knew that I wanted to coach women. I knew I wanted to build them up. I knew I wanted to give them unshakable confidence and help them feel validated the way that I wanted when I was younger. Like, my drive to help is so strong. Like, I put so many people before myself. I would give my last fiver to somebody if I had to. So, like, being a coach just comes to me so naturally. I'm always willing to help people. And it's noticeable because I would never want someone to feel the way that I did. And I'd never want them to feel lost. I'd never want them to feel like they couldn't get help. So that is probably my life mission now, is to continue doing that. And
is there like a big goal with it?
To be honest, it changes. Like, I really did want my own facility. I really did want my own gym, and whether that comes or not, I don't know.
What's put you off it?
Just like what is involved, I guess, like the amount that JP puts into his gym, obviously the amount that you've put into yours as well, like you don't realise what actually goes into it all, and like if that doesn't work, then it is probably a scarcity thing on my end, like, oh,
Guess the question back to you is like, why the gym? Like, why would you want that?
For me, it would be a case of I'd want to grow the business to be able to hand it, like to have staff and eventually to hand it to someone else, and like be a visionary and still be in the background, but see it come to life with like staff and this community of women that I want for myself. And that's what I always wanted, was to have like a strong, safe space for women, a community for women where they could exercise and they could,
Would you make it a women's only gym?
Yeah, like I think that's needed. I don't think there's a lot of them.
So
yeah.
That is the dream then, that's the goal. Like there's no reason why, like just because it's hard work, that's not stopped you before. So don't let it stop you now.
It's just, I think it is just like the work that's involved, like where do I start? But like I do want to look into it more. Like I'm never going to stop looking into it. Like it's just, I know it's a work in progress.
Yeah. I'm sure JP was going to be open and honest with the stuff that goes on there, and likewise I would be here. Like there's no like it can be very secret-y in terms of like what you do, but it's so like crazy.
Put over 100 grand into that gym.
Aye.
Like just in kit.
It's mental, I know. Everything's crazy, but you can also do it from there's different ways to do it, and it's not as if you're going to have your dream facility as soon as you walk in. I've changed this place 4 or 5 times, and I'm like, okay, I wish I never painted that black, and we'll do this.
I know,
now.
like
you're just always going to be.
It's like your house as well. Like you spend a lot of time here.
I know.
So.
And the amount of times meet Jill, I would say Jill has done her living room up. We've done our living room up 3 times and we only had it. We're basically doing our living room every year at this rate. They're meant to last for like 5-10 years.
Same, like the living room, kitchen, bathroom, always got to change.
Yeah, it's like different things. So if you ever get to the end of the podcast I've done with David, he done a 15-year plan, and it was like this big beyond dream that seems so ridiculous that he's written down. But what that's allowed him to do in the conversation I had with him was, it seems so unachievable because you're thinking 15 years down the line. What that's allowed him to do is reverse engineer and step back. So it's like writing those goals down.
That's one of the things I want to do, is like write a solid, at least 5-year plan and aim towards that. Sometimes it's hard because you're literally just trying to get through to the next day. Never mind 5 years.
It's like, I don't even know what I'm doing tomorrow. Yeah. Never mind. I'm trying to plan my week out here.
I definitely want to sit and solidify that. I know John has one, and I want to actually sit and actively work towards it to create more momentum. Like I'm fully settled in JP's. Like a client asked me the other day, she was like, do you see yourself being here then? I was like, I don't see myself being anywhere else. Like this is where I've been welcomed into. This is the community. Everybody knows me. I know them. Like they're all lovely. They all want me to succeed.
I think this is the hard thing you end up getting to, because hearing your story and you try to think where you're at now, and make a guess and say you'd probably be the younger you would be incredibly proud
for sure
of this kind of woman that you've turned into. It seems so unachievable, like so unrealistic. So right now, if I'm like, you'll have 5 facilities that are all women only that have your mission, like, nah, that's out of the ordinary. That thought that you have just now would be the same thought that the 16-year-old you would have thinking of how your life is just now.
Yeah, definitely. So, like I think of it, even if I was to sit across from a 2020 version of myself and tell her everything that's happened 4 years later, like even me driving, that's mad. Because I spent so long doing my lessons. So even telling her that, she'd be like, what? Like it's so much. Like there is so much that I have done, and there is so much that I have yet still to do. But I know that I'm waking up every day getting closer to it, and that makes me happy.
What are you most proud of? What's some of the things that come to mind?
That I'm still here, I suppose.
Yeah.
Like everything that I've been through, that would have destroyed people. I know it would have. But for some reason, I still woke up and said, no, I want to try again. I'm more proud of me trying than I am of anything else in my life. And that's one thing that I would always encourage people to do, is like, just always give yourself the opportunity to try. Like, who cares if it doesn't work out? Like, who cares if like you have to start again? Just try and wake up every day knowing that the longer that you keep doing this, the easier it will get. And the more that you build up practice and reduce that anxiety, it just gets less and less and less. So my mental resilience and like my discipline, which has probably been ingrained in me from when I was doing karate and stuff, like that's something I'm more proud of that I've continued.
Do you build on it as well?
Like I'm so proud of like me, and I never really say that about myself a lot, but I did all this myself, realistically.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say. You said you'd give away your last £5 to someone.
Yeah.
What do you do for yourself?
Not very much. That's the thing. Like, I feel so guilty when I take time off. I feel so guilty when I'm not sitting doing something, or I'm not helping somebody, or I'm not checking in with someone. Like, even clients are like, Bex, take time off. Like, even in my holiday, I'm like, don't worry, guys. Like, I'll still make sure you're all right. I'll still be messaging. And they're like that. No.
I think you need to shape your own journey with that, because I'm very similar to you. It's like, oh no, take time out. It's like, but you know what? I don't want to. I want to foster this life that I want. So
Yeah.
you're doing things like high rocks you never thought you would be doing. You're doing certain lifts in the gym.
It's that bad. I did it twice.
It's insanely like impressive. That is the things that you're doing for you. You train every day.
Yeah.
Like, you need to bring awareness to your self-care.
Yeah.
Like, that's really what it's about. I heard you talk about your self-care. It's like not just a bubble bath and a facial or a face mask.
Yeah, like everybody always says, like, your self-care is like related to that, and I'm like, it can be something else. Like, see, when somebody's like, what's your hobbies? I'm like, the gym. Like, I like reading, I like spending time with people that I love and care about, I like listening to music. Like, I'll have a bath. I don't really enjoy them. Like, I'm more of a shower person. But like, my self-care is like looking after me and my training and the time that I do get to myself.
Yeah, that's really what it should mean. Shifting gears a little bit, 'cause you said something that I really wanted to ask you on.
Mm-hmm.
Being a female in the PT space, how have you found it, and what is the main challenges that you face?
Oh, it's interesting. I think over the years, we're not really taken seriously. And I'm sure if someone is a female PT, they'll understand. But compared to like male peers, I don't think we're taken as seriously. And I also think that we are so sexualized, and it's mad, because someone could be showing you the exact same video demonstration as a female, and then a man would do it, and the comments on the female version would be absolutely nuts and sexualized, whereas the guy might get, that's really good, useful information, mate, thanks so much for that. And that's something that I have battled with, is like, I'm not a fitness model. This is not a beauty pageant. I'm serious about my job. Like, just because I'm strong and muscular doesn't mean that it's okay for you to like comment on my body or anything.
Do you get that?
Sometimes, yeah. And it doesn't mean that it's okay. That's one thing I have struggled with. Probably as well, like, when you're in the fitness space, and like, obviously there's all this talk about photo shoots and stuff like that. Obviously, when it comes to females, I feel like you've got obviously somebody's life in your hands, and that's what people don't realise a lot of the time. But I feel like when guys coach women and they go for all these photo shoots, I feel like there's a fear, especially from my clients, that guys will then take advantage of their female clients, whereas women, they think that they won't do that. So I feel sorry for guys in that sense. Whereas there has been clients that have told me horror stories from male PTs that they could never tell their, like, say for example, they could never tell their male PT that they're on their period, but they would happily tell me that. But I think there's both sides to the coin with that one.
I wanted to actually tap into the photo shoot side of things if you're up for a debate on it, for sure. But before we go into that, what's your biggest frustration then just now being a PT?
Like, in terms of like
from a female perspective, or even just in general, like what's the frustrations for you?
Definitely, like as I said at the start, like not being taken seriously, but also on the other side of things,
which is mad because you lift heavier than these guys that are commenting, right? So it's like, wind your neck in,
not being taken seriously is a big thing. I probably didn't articulate that very well, but like definitely not being taken seriously. And then the other side of the coin, which I'm frustrated for men about, is like they feel that they probably can't train female clients because there's all this like past horror stories of males taking advantage of females, which is a shame. Personally for me, like the comments on my body, the comments on like, oh, you're strong for a girl, or like, oh, that's heavy for a girl, that pisses me off.
Yeah, Jill tells me stories all the time.
What do
like,
you mean?
What was it Jill was doing the other day? I don't know if she was taking something out to the car, she was buying something, or I don't know if was it when she was going on holiday and she lifted her bag up and the guy obviously being polite, but then also patronising and really infuriating. I was like, no, I can fucking watch this bitch. No, I'll show you. So
I
so
love
that's
that video, her pushing the sled.
I know. It's crazy. Like, so she could call the tranny. She go, oh, but the guy can push more and all this sort of stuff. That's a big frustration I have. Like, why is that your go-to? Aye.
It's like, even on TikTok, you'll see, like, in gaming, like, if I was to think of John and his gaming, if a female was gaming and playing Call of Duty, there's a video that I seen, and she literally said 2 words, and they were all jumping at her, like, fat cow, cunt, like, horrible names, horrible words at her because she's a female.
No, you shouldn't laugh at it. It's just it's the toxic part of like social media and hiding behind a faceless account. And the thing that baffles me the most, like that video with Jillian, that's on Instagram as well, and it got just as much kind of hatred in the comments. Don't get me wrong, it was like a tune and throwing like men vs women, and I was like, what the fuck are you doing? This has got nothing to do with if women are stronger men or men are stronger women. It's got nothing to do with that. It's just, it's impressive that the common theme was anyone at 5 foot was going to struggle to push the sled. She pushed the sled. Like, it's not much deeper than that.
It's mad as well, because I also find that in the gym, like, obviously I work there, but members will, like, I'll be talking to my friends in the gym who are guys, and guys will talk over me to that guy and ask them about something. And that bothers me.
Oh, really?
Because I'm like, why are you not asking me? Like, you know I work here. Why have you just went and asked someone else that?
Do you feel as a girl in the PT space that when you're trying to, or you need to almost work as hard to get through?
Yeah. I feel like I've always got a point to prove.
Aye, that's the word I'm looking for, point to prove.
If other people are female PTs and maybe know what I'm talking about, but I feel like you've always got to prove yourself. I feel like you've always got to look a certain way as well. Maybe it's the same for guys, but I feel like as a personal trainer, you've always got to look your best. You've always got to be in shape, like, especially as women. Like,
do you think that's like...
It's hard.
Do you think that is the norm, or do you think that's more insecurities of your own?
I feel like it's a bit of both. I feel like you are your business when you are PT, like how people look at you as their first representation and like opinion of you, essentially. But I follow PTs who aren't ripped, don't have 6-packs. And, like, I respect that. Like, they still want to help people, and they've still got a message, and they've still got knowledge to give people. So it just goes to show you, like, it's not just about how you look. But I feel like it's frustrating in the sense that you'll get people that will do bodybuilding competitions, and because they are in that stage lean condition, somebody's like, yeah, they're the coach for me, because it's just how they look. So I do think it's like,
I think there's
with that.
a baseline to have, a baseline of fitness, strength, experience, whatever you want to call it. But then there is, once you're over that baseline, the standard isn't incredibly high with it, but once you're over that line, it's like, oh, like there's someone who can, I don't know, deadlift with perfect form 100 kilo, and there's someone who is 4 times the size of them. Just because they're bigger doesn't mean that they're going to know any more information, or just because they're stronger. Because I think from your story, like hearing what empowerment means to you, there's very little on the training side of things, and it's actually more about the mental state, what you can gain from within and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, like my journey's never been for aesthetics. Like, it's never been to like change how I look. It's always been to like better my headspace.
So the last bit we'll finish on is this overrated, underrated, because there's a question in there that will kind of bring us on to the photo shoots part. So I'll run through the quick fire overrated, underrated that was asked. So the first one was sleds. Overrated, underrated.
Sleds for like high rocks?
Sled push, not just in general, sled push and pull.
Overrated.
Oh, really? You think so?
Yeah.
Right, next one, plastic surgery.
Me personally, underrated. I need that.
What would you get?
Definitely a boob job. Like, they are something that bothers me. John's sick of hearing about it. I think it depends, like that one, because some people can take it really far and other people need it for different reasons. So I think it depends what context.
Right, fair. Photo shoots?
Overrated.
Overrated, oh, interesting. Steroids?
Overrated.
And the last one, hybrid athletes?
The good ones are underrated.
What do you mean by that? Who's the good ones?
Like the actual hybrid athletes.
Right.
The term hybrid athlete, overrated.
Because it's just everybody's bio now.
Yeah.
So the one I was like just finish up talking about is the photo shoot side of things. Do you think it's overrated then? Interesting.
Yeah, like I'll do them for my clients because I feel like it helps them with their confidence, but we're not trying to get to pure lean conditions. Like it's just their effort and what they achieve. Like I'll never say to them, you need to look like this on the day.
So what sort of confidence is that instilling in them from
that they can do hard things, like, and they have a purpose to aim towards. They can stand in front of a camera in a vulnerable position, that sounds mad, but like in like their gym gear or like in their lingerie or whatever, and feel sexy and feel good about themselves. So that's hard for them.
This is a question I have, and like this might be like a bit of a harsh questioning, but totally naive to this because I don't think I'll ever do photo shoots with clients, but I'm genuinely curious, what's the need to go from like the gym gear to the lingerie side of things from a being sexy or
because
whatever?
For a lot of these women, like they'll never have even had sex with their partner with the lights on.
Right.
So like to then go for that image of a photo shoot where they can stand in front of someone feeling the way that they do speaks a lot for itself. And I will never say to a client, this is what you need to do. It is completely their choice. What I do think is overrated, for what I was saying, the overrated thing was that people who are pushed into these lean lingerie shoots, yes, that's overrated. What's underrated is the confident shoot where it's different in the sense that it's client-led. They want to do that because it can prove to them that they can do hard things and that they are actually confident enough to believe that that's possible. It's not for everybody. It's not something that I have in my plan of like, this is what we're going to do. It's completely client-led.
Yeah.
I'll never force it on them. But what I think is overrated is when coaches do say, this is, we're going to aim for this.
There's a difference in the messaging side of things, isn't it? What about like the attention side of things of it? Do you think there is clients that can get caught up in that? Because me personally, when I've had clients ask me, it's like, can we do a photo shoot? And I shoot it down, but don't try and influence them. So if you want to do one, absolutely do one. But I want to understand why you're doing them. And when I've got to that question and when I've dive deeper into that with a client, it's usually for the attention of the other sex.
Yeah.
Do you find that at all?
Not really, not with my clients. It's because they want to do it for themselves. It's because they want to feel confident. That is my message that I will install to them. Our mission is to install unshakable confidence into females. So for them, that is the epitome of that. Like that is a marker that they can get to. Because some of them, it will never cross their mind. They want to do something else. But for the people that do want to do it, for them, that is the best thing that they can do to prove to themselves that they can do hard things and that's what they want to aim towards and be healthy. And for some people it can be life-changing and they can get into the best shape of their life and actually maintain that, which if that helps them push and helps them like tap into mental resilience and tap into discipline and follow habits better, I'm all for that.
Yeah. You mentioned something about like the sexualization of like women PTs and just women in general, and when they get into fitness, do you think the photo shoots enhance that, or do you think that's where
it's intended for that purpose? I would say, like, it depends how you look at it. For me, like, there is a lot of talk on the internet about like even the things that females will wear to the gym. Some guys will be like, they'll see a video of an influencer wearing shorts and then they'll comment something stupid like, oh, and this is why girls say guys stare at them in the gym. Like an outfit is not an excuse for you to stare at someone in the gym and intentionally sexualise them. I could be wearing my grand's dressing gown and you'd still sexualise me if that's the type of person that you are. So
what about the lingerie shoots then? Because
I think the lingerie, like, if you're looking at it like that, yes. Right. But if you're looking at it from the message of this person has opened themselves up and allowed themselves to be at a stage where they can stand in front of that camera in the most vulnerable place and show everybody their hard work, that's what I look at it like. Like, that is incredible for me. That is sheer relentless pursuit of confidence. Like, that is somebody that is admirable, somebody that is courageous, somebody that has got the balls to do that, and I respect that. And as a coach, I think that's amazing that someone can go from lacking confidence, a shell of a person, like not feeling themselves, lost, unhealthy, worst shape of their life or whatever, to then doing that. Which is why I think like things like the 12-week peak is amazing, because these people will come from previous walks of life where they were lost and unhealthy, to then that has changed their life. So I think it really just depends what lens you're looking at it like.
How do you balance the insecurities that can come from it? Because it's all about the look.
Because I think for the look, I think it is down to self-comparison. Like, whether we do compare ourselves a lot on social media, I do it as well. Like, we're all guilty of it. I do think the obsession will only come if you look at someone and say, I want to look like that. Whereas if you just go in and say, I'm going to present myself as the best version that I can be, your view changes.
Yeah.
Like, you don't compare yourself.
I think it's hard because I was like comparison the thief of joy is like the common quote that you hear, but you also need to aim for something, and you need a comparison. Sometimes you need to know, like, and this is what I'm kind of stealing this from. Went a hill climb recently, and I heard this conversation with my brother and this guy, and he's like, "What's your physical goal?" And he's like, "Nah, comparison's the thief of joy." And he's like, "Right, cool, I love that, I get that, but what you train towards? You training to look like Mo Farah? You training to look like Dale? You training to look like a bodybuilder? Like, what is it?" So you need that guiding light almost sometimes.
Like inspiration, absolutely, but comparison and inspiration are two different things.
Yeah.
Like, you can be inspired by somebody and want to take a step because of that, but if you start comparing yourself and saying, why am I not like them, that's different.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, look, they were quite difficult questions to throw in at the end there, but thank you for your time. Like, incredible. We've all got insecurities that we're working through, but you definitely got a story that's worth telling, that's for sure. So you don't keep that within, because I'm sure there's, you know yourself, that you wouldn't be a coach, you wouldn't be on the path that you're in if you weren't capable of inspiring and helping other people. So it's great to have the platform to share on. Perfect, thank you.